Welcome to the False Start Podcast. Where
Cause you're listening to Jams and Tea, you want to see the show on your TV, so we talk about things musically. Cause you're listening to Jams and Tea, you're listening to Jams and Tea.
Anyway, but this is actually the Jams and Tea Podcast, where we spin the jams and spill the tea. And today we have arrived for our new weekly episode, where we are going to be covering 3 different records today. We are going to cover No by Boris. We're going to talk about the new Jessie Ware album, What's Your Pleasure? And the recommended record for this week comes from me, as we have done our first cycle of recommended records, and that is Kyle Craft's Full Circle Nightmare.
Plus, we're also talking about an additional record, the remix album,
Yes.
1000 Gecs and the Tree of Clues.
Some of us are.
Some of us are, yeah. Understandably.
Not to get ahead of myself here, but I did listen to that for the express purposes of talking about it here. And
sure
Tyler
you
beforehand, Tyler was just like, I want to make this a miniature segment because I know Morgan is not going to like this. And when I listened to the album today, within 5 seconds, I would just be like, yeah, Morgan would turn it off. He would turn it off immediately. 5 seconds in, I was like,
Yeah, and that
No.
would not be fair on our beloved Morgan.
I must confess, lads. I must confess. I did listen to 1000 Gecs today, and I quite liked it. But
it's
then I
decent.
started listening to 1000 Gecs and watched it, and I was like, this is good, but I have other things I need to spend my time doing at the moment than
that's
listening to
fair.
this.
So we're starting with- No, we'll get to that. We've got to do our main intro segment first. So
Yes.
let's jump straight into what we've been listening to. We'll go around the circle, table, whatever, and discuss
whatever.
what's been on rotation in the past 7 days, aside from the albums we're discussing today. Jake, do you want to kick us off?
Sure thing. Not as much music as last week, but I think that was more for the sake of my mental well-being, I suppose, because it means I had to work less. That being said, I delved into the entire discography of a one Mr. Earl Sweatshirt, one of my current favorite, maybe the most consistent one of the Odd Future crew. Whoa, you were amused by that. You okay?
Silence.
Carry on.
Okay.
It's your
I
time.
thought Tyler was gonna say, no, I just thought Tyler was gonna say something and he didn't.
No, because you cut out.
Look, we
You cut
can-
out for me, so I didn't even hear what you said.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Anywho, I
wanna
really like
know
all his
now.
albums. What? Oh, well, I really like all of his albums, and I would say that it's a really consistent discography. If you just want some good, slightly darker shit, go right for it. Doris is a great debut. I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside is also great. And Some Rap Songs is a masterpiece. But, you know, not ready to have that conversation. That's fine. I re-listened to Pinata by Freddie Gibbs, which, I mean, it's amazing. What do you want from me? It's great. It's also Madlib's best production, but you didn't hear that from me. I did also re-listen to Igor by Tyler, the Creator, which is fucking fantastic. I've spun that like 1,000 times at this point. I
It's one of
re-listened
the
to
only albums
Baroness.
I can think of where you've like completely turned around on.
Yep, completely.
Like
One of the maybe
usually-
3 examples.
Your music opinions are fairly,
Yep.
But anyway,
No, I mean, it's true. Like, at first listened to Igor, and I was just like, this sounds like elevator music. I'm not into it. And then I tried it again and was like,
but what if elevator music was good?
Yeah,
And
what
gay.
good elevation music.
but yeah, that's still great. I listened to Purple by Baroness, just because Baroness is one of my favorite modern metal acts, and Purple is their best album, and I love it. I listened to the Billy Joel album Turnstiles, mainly because our friend Spencer had made a thread of his favorite songs, and the second one, I believe, on Turnstiles is like a Highland Fall or Summer Highland Falls, something like that. It's a song about bipolar disorder, and it's fucking great. The album's good, but it's no The Stranger. I listened to Luciferian Towers by Godspeed You Black Emperor, which is good, but not as good as the other two. So,
weird third
good.
one to jump to, actually. I don't hear much about it for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely good. It's just like, I just kind of wish I was listening to, Lift Your Skinny Fists or...
Yeah. I strongly recommend you just do them like in order from now on. Like listen to Yankee, listen to Hallelujah.
Yankee was next up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get on with that. I did that. Earl Sweatshirt again. I re-listened to Punisher because, I listened to two Nick Cave albums just because...
Honestly, we can just stop. Yeah. We can stop saying that. It's been like 5 episodes now.
Just assuming we're listening to Punisher.
You can report when there's a week that you don't listen to Punisher.
Yeah, do that.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, look, I wasn't talking about it. It was a sentence long. Shut the fuck up. Anyway, I listened to 2 Nick Cave albums, No More Shall We Part and Tender Prey, which are both fucking fantastic.
Very close to my heart, those albums.
No More Shall We Part has some of the most wild guitar usage on any of his albums, and it fucking rips. It's great. And Tender Prey is fucking awesome. It's just like one of the best post-punk albums ever. And I listened to, at the recommendation of Tyler from last week's podcast, I listened to Bone Machine by Tom Waits, which is and I also listened to Mule Variations, all of which I've loved the 3 Tom Waits albums. I gave them like the exact same score, but Bone Machine is so far my favorite, and that album is rickety and weird and dark, and I highly recommend it. It's quite catchy. I re-listened to King Crimson, fucking Christ on a bike, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Infest the Rat's Nest, and 12 Bar Brews, which are 2 of my favorites of their catalog. I did.
Good choices. Great records.
I also on Tyler's recommendation, I listened to Billy Wood's Hiding Places, which is a release I slept on last year, and I am regretting it because that is going to go into the Jake canon.
Yeah, it's my favorite hip-hop album. It's my favorite hip-hop album of 2019, definitely.
It's great. I also listened to prepare for this podcast.
Just before your time is up, so you get through this one, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. Okay, I listened to the Boris, 3 Boris albums just to prepare for today, and that was actually it. And clipping, that's it. But Boris, I listened to Feedbacker. That album it's a rocky start, but it's a great finish.
Yeah. Did you listen to Pink by any chance?
I did. Pink, I've listened to Pink, Feedbacker, and No. And Pink is great, and I will save my thoughts for No later. But Pink is great. I had that solid rec.
Yeah.
Feedbacker, that's kind of what we do to musicians on this podcast.
Hey, there's that classic surgical punning I was looking for.
My favorite horror film, The Punning.
I want to die.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Okay, August, what have you been listening to, my good fellow?
Oh, let's see. All right, first up, I listened to a Jake Morgan core classic, Act 1, The South Lake, The River North by... none other than the Deer Hunter.
Not to be confused
album.
with
the other one.
Yeah, good album. My one complaint is it doesn't feel really like, it's kind of the same complaint I have with the Backwash album of it. It just doesn't feel complete enough.
No, it's a glorified EP.
Yeah. That's very, very true. I admire the simplicity of Act 1, but it's built upon.
Yeah.
Continuing on, I listened to Towers by Towers, a very allotted 2019 ambient vaporwave kind of dark wave album. It's very allotted in some circles. Myself, I don't really see the hype. I think it's just all right, but it's fun while it's on.
Yeah, I will say as a general fan of like ambient and sort of music and like electronic music, I've really never gotten the thing about vaporwave. Like it's never really any of it's really ever clicked for me, apart from One O Tricks Point Never's vaporwavy stuff, like Replica.
Yeah, no, I mean there's some vaporwave stuff I'm really into. Like I like James Ferraro a lot, but a lot of it can kind of roll off of me.
Yeah.
Continuing on. Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden. Not my favorite Iron Maiden record of that period, but
Still,
I mean, you can't ignore songs. Can't ignore songs like The Trooper and Tame the Land. Can't ignore that stuff. Some really essential stuff on there. I've said stuff like 7 times in this sentence.
That is like the definition of an 8 out of 10 album.
What is?
It's good.
Peace of mind.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. I think that's what I have it at.
Very good.
Anyways, continuing on. Listen to a comeback EP, more of a pair of songs. Comeback EP, Return of the Laser Viking by an Albatross.
It's very good.
Their first release in 12 years, and I was very satisfied with it because I've been a fan of an Albatross since like 2018, and it's really great to hear that they still have just the chaotic spirit within them. And this time they're delving into a much more political topic than they've really ever touched on before.
I saw an Albatross live the other day in the park.
Oh.
Okay,
hilarious.
Robert Pattinson.
Never allowed to judge Saoirse's puns ever again. Ever.
Well, Saoirse just judged him, which is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I know, right?
Really.
I'm feeling so...
I wasn't judging him. I was riffing off the punnage that was happening.
But the tone was... Anyway.
Continue.
Kill 'Em All by Metallica. Great first album. I needed to return to it. If you think that album's mid-tier, you're a mid-tier human being.
No, I will rip off your head.
Basically, all but
throat.
objectively the third best Metallica album.
Yeah!
I would say it's the second best.
I would say it's the third.
Okay.
I would say it's the first, but that's a different
conversation, Jay.
For another day.
Anyways, then the album I was showing off, Laser Guided Melodies by Spiritualized. Of course, debut. On cassette. Very good. But what's best about this, and what I need to talk about, is this. It's a business reply mail from the early 90s. Just to give you an idea of some of the questions, which this is a survey thing, to give you an idea of some of the questions being asked. Do you watch any of the following daytime TV shows? CBS This Morning, Montel Williams, Geraldo Rivera, Good Morning America, Sally Jesse Raphael, The Today Show, Phil Donahue, Regis and Kathy Lee, and Oprah. Yeah, I know I butchered that.
This is so good.
Yeah. Laugh it up.
I'm just laughing at Morgan.
Yes, Regis and Kelly. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna give you another minute because of that outburst.
Now I'm gonna end my life after this. And the final album I wanted to talk about was an album that I listened to on the whim of, I don't think anyone would have ever expected me to listen to this on my own. That being Down Colorful Hill by the Red House Painters.
Oh, okay.
And
wow, you're correct. I would not have guessed that.
Some early cosmic.
Type beat.
It wouldn't be the last thing in the world I would guess August would listen to, but good album.
Not high on the list, I would assume.
It's a good album. It has some great songs on it.
Yeah, it does. I don't think
there's one of my favorite. Sorry, you go, August.
The title track is fantastic. The second song on there, I can't quite. Name's failing me at the moment.
My names are fucking me up as well, but there's one of my favorite Mark Kozelek songs ever on the album, and I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, great album.
Yes, it's quite good. I was very shocked at how much.
It's the title track. Duh. I really like the title track.
Yeah. Title track's fantastic. It's just like this repetition of like I don't know, maybe 2 verses for 10 minutes, and it's just lovely.
Very good, very hypnotic stuff. That early Kozilek stuff. It's
Yeah.
I don't know if slowcore would be this group's thing generally, but Mark Kozilek does it really well in those early Red House Painters albums.
No, it's a nice album. Yeah, that's what I listened to this week.
Nice. I mean,
Very good.
slowcore. I will listen to literally fucking anything. So
Yeah. Well, it's like
why not?
it's like basically like droney electric guitars played really, really slowly with these kind of crooning vocals.
Stoner
That could be
folk,
good.
basically.
Yeah. I mean.
Oh yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Is that
Yeah,
everything?
that's fine.
Is that everything on the list?
Yes, that is.
Okay. Well, we're up to Morgan next.
All right. Most notably, I guess, I haven't been listening to too much this week outside of the albums we're discussing today, but most notably, I have finally sat down and listened to Slowdive's Souvlaki,
Oh, cool.
which
nice.
is like, Tyler said, I think it was yesterday, that like he asked us in our group chat if we ever had like an album that we were like kind of too intimidated to listen to just because you knew it would be like an instant favorite.
Yep.
And that is definitely one of those, even though I said I didn't have those. But yeah, it's Souvlaki. What do you want? It's great. What do you?
No,
It's so good.
Yeah.
Shocked.
Otherwise, I have been listening some to Manic Street Preachers, going back into their discography. Some. The album I was on that I listened to that I haven't heard before was "This Is My Truth, Tell Me Yours," which is just so mid. It's really disappointing because it's, especially coming off of their last 4 records, it's so like low energy and doesn't really have a whole lot in the way of hooks. And like there are definitely some highlights on it, but mostly it's just kind of middling Brit pop without any of the energy. It's fine.
I get that perspective. I get it.
Medication.
Otherwise, I have been listening some to one of my favorite albums from last year, sort of retrospectively, because I didn't listen to it last year, was the Japanese house album "Good at Falling," which I am very fond of. It's admittedly it is fairly inconsistent, but the highs on that record are immense, and I am a very big fan overall, and I can't wait to see what she does next. Otherwise, Jesus, excuse me. Thank you. Jeez.
I was gonna say that.
Deftones.
Never can listen to Deftones.
Because it could not possibly be. Yeah, I mean, I know, right? But yeah, I've been listening to Gore because even as much as I sing
Me
that album's
too.
praises, I haven't listened to it enough.
Me too.
Like,
I
I
listened to
think
Gore
it's-
this week as well.
No, it's real good, you know. This is one I've been listening to while I've been reading lately, especially considering what I've been reading lately is Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. I've been listening to The Cure's Disintegration while reading that, which is like
Classic.
I mean, that's another one where I'm just like, it's disintegration. What do you want? What do you want from me?
It's a good
But I
matchup
guess
for the
most-
Sandman as well.
Yeah, that's two albums, Morgan, you've just listed in your spiel that are on the bracket that we're going to be dropping.
It's true.
Slash-
And will probably do quite well.
Yeah, I would expect so. But yeah, that's the thing I've noticed most about disintegration in like these past few listens from this week is like just how like post-rocky it is in places.
Yep.
The songs that you throw on from that album are usually like love song or lullaby or pictures of you.
Pictures
If you're
of
not
You.
listening to the whole thing,
Yep.
you tend to go towards the singles mostly. But
No
like
skips.
shut up.
August sounding like a fucking 100 Gecs song.
Wow.
How many skips make an album? Hang on. How many skips? I don't have a wine glass. I really need like a wine glass to do that. How many skips make an album trash?
In this Pitchfork article, I will.
I start chemotherapy next week. Thank you all for that. Yeah, my time's just about up, and that's all I really have anyway. Music is cool.
Very, very good.
Music is very cool. We should do a podcast about it.
Right?
Genius.
Makes
you think.
Doesn't it, Jeff?
Trisha,
anyway, I have also listened to a lot of albums from the bracket this week, but I'm not going to talk about any of them. Because I listened to a stupid amount of music this week, so I'm going to skip a lot of things. So I listened to like 5 King Gizzard albums this week.
Yeah.
They are quickly becoming one of my favorite bands. I have more in my Spotify queue. I am in love. I've listened to every Against Me record in the last 2 days for unrelated reasons that you don't need to know about. The King Gizzard record I am happiest about spinning this week, though, is this one, which arrived in the post like 2 days ago, and I love it. He's My Son. And this other record that arrived.
Why is Tyler?
This is My Daughter.
Yes.
BB.
And anyway,
yes, the Beatles'
as you may
White
realize,
Album.
Shut up. Fuck you. Shut up.
All Hail West Texas for those. Of you.
The Beatles ain't got a record as good as All Hail West Texas.
They
Beatles
really
don't
don't.
even have a record as good as Tallahassee.
They
don't.
They do. I'm shitposting. Revolver is great, but so are those albums.
Hell yeah, Revolver.
Anyway, I have listened to lots of other folk punk this week. I had a bit of a binge at the beginning.
What a
basically,
imagine my shock.
I know, but basically, I realized like I have a lot of holes in my folk punk knowledge for someone who loves the genre so much. So I basically watched the Page Fire video, how to do folk punk, wrote down every album I hadn't heard, and then listened to them all. Some highlights include... Sorry?
I just said best way to do it.
Yeah. So I re-listened to People Who Eat People by Andrew Jackson, much better record than I remembered it being. I listened to Risk So Much for One Damn Meal by The Taxpayers. Which it's not their best album, but it's really good. And the real highlight has been discovering a band called Stick and Poke. It's a female folk punk duo. They put out 2 albums and then broke up. They were based in Vancouver, and they broke up when basically they weren't living in the same city anymore, which is like fair enough. Which is very sad because their music, it comes through just how much chemistry and love they have for each other. It's basically folk punk that your mum could enjoy, not because it isn't authentic folk punk, but because just the harmonies are so sweet. They sing together and combine really well, especially on Never Going Back. They bring in violins, and it's just like overwhelming aesthetic beauty, and I can't recommend it enough. I recommend a lot of folk punk records that people never listen to. I'm at peace with that. But if you're going to listen to one of them, like make it this one, Never Going Back by Stick and Poke. I also listened to Sun Bat Per this week, which I just adored so much. It's probably my favorite album I've listened to this week. Just euphoric black metal, which is not something I say very often, but is euphoric. I listened to it the day I realized I'd gotten a first in my degree, and it was just the perfect matchup for that. Also listened to Trouble Will Find Me by The National, which I enjoyed. I listened to SF Sorrow by The Pretty Things, oldest record I listened to this week. 68 kind of prefaces what a lot of the Beatles are doing with psychedelic music later in their career. It's really good. And I listened to The Downward Spiral by 9 Inch Nails as well,
nice.
which I had a fantastic time with.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah,
fun
I've
it's
heard-
album.
very fun. Yeah,
I've heard many of the songs
it's
before.
a real
Um,
joy to listen to.
I had a very good time with it.
Yeah, no,
For being
se-
such a bleak album.
Genuinely, I have a great time with it too. Every time I put it on, just throw my shit
Yeah.
down. It's just
Um,
really, it's good.
Yeah, and especially listening to it in context and just realizing how much the album just feels like slowly dying on drugs.
Yeah,
Um,
you should listen to
What if it
Love it.
skipped out for a
listen to
second?
the Fragile next.
wait, did you cut out, Jake?
I did. What album are you talking about?
Well, the Downward Spiral, but are you the one recording?
I'm
No,
recording.
no.
Don't worry, I'm recording.
Oh, thank fuck.
Don't worry.
No,
Anyway,
Downward Spiral is great.
Yeah. But basically, the album, I said in my music board review that it feels like slowly dying on methamphetamines. And that makes the final track have such a different context for me,
Yeah.
in the context of that story being the closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it to pieces.
I'll tell you,
I think I prefer.
Your time is up, but finish.
Well,
your
that's
point.
good because I'm done.
Oh, word.
All right, sweet. So I will whirl through the big list of albums I've listened to this week. I'll start with the re-listens, the albums I heard but not for the first time. I revisited The Color and the Shape by Foo Fighters, which I hadn't heard for many years. I do think it's a good album. I don't like it as much as their debut. I will say that.
Congrats, you're the only one.
Yeah,
Hardcore.
fine. I think the
Oh,
debut is
he's-
more
he's-
consistent.
He's definitely not. That's definitely the cool kid Foo Fighters take, as if cool kids have Foo Fighters takes.
I'm not trying to be
But
a cool
anyway.
kid. I just think that
I know.
The Color and the
I
Shape.
know.
It starts with some great songs, it finishes with some great songs, and the middle's just not quite there. Whereas the first record is just there the whole way through. I listened to Love Iron Song by Frank Turner a bunch more times. I already talked about that last week. I listened to XI by Ortecker because of course I did. Great album. I would love to talk about it at some point. I listened to, what else did I listen to that I've already heard? I listened to White Pepper and the Mollusk by Ween, two of their best albums, two of the best kind of rock albums of that era. Beautiful albums in the sense that every single song sounds completely unique and they all fuck really hard. I listened to Hiding Places by Billy Woods again, as did Jake, which is a great rap album, as I've already said. I listened to Murmur by R.E.M., which is probably their best album of the 80s, maybe their best album in general. Hard to say, but it's really fucking good. I listened to Like Morgan. I listened to Gore by Deftones, which I had underrated, as a lot of people seem to. Very good album. Not quite at the top tier level for me, but when it hits hard, it really hits. There's nothing bad on it. I also listened to Small Change by Tom Waits again, which is an underrated Tom Waits album. Not a great record. There's some duds on it. He definitely peaked in terms of the 70s era. He definitely peaked with Closing Time, but I think that's a record that still has one of his best songs on it. Small Change, the opening track, is one of his best songs, which I can't remember the name of. I also listened to Ride the Lightning by Metallica again. Great album, really fantastic record. I'm trying to decide what my favorite Metallica album is. It's either Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets, but I have to revisit Master of Puppets before I can make that call. I listened to Power Slave by Iron Maiden second time, which is my favorite Iron Maiden record so far. I haven't listened to anything beyond that point yet. So Somewhere in Time is next. But Power Slave is a great album. I think it's probably my favorite metal album of the 80s. Just in general, it's really, really fucking good. In terms of first listens, I listened to Opeth's Morning Rise, so I continued my journey through my slow trudge through the discography of Opeth, trying to do one album a week, hopefully, at least. But yeah, I really, really liked Morning Rise. I liked it more than Orchid, even though I felt that it had some of the same issues of like the songs kind of just feeling like different ideas that are kind of just thrown together into a single track that don't necessarily always like connect and flow as a single piece of music. But that's not so much a problem because the ideas in musical playing itself is still so really, really good and compelling. I'm just hoping that on some of their next few records, the pieces will start to cohere to sort of feel like actual unified pieces of music rather than just ideas thrown together. But I really liked it. I also listened to two really kind of slept on albums that I haven't heard very much about. McCluskey's album My Pain and Sadness is More Sad and Painful Than Yours, which is a great album title for one. Not a great album, but it has some really strong high points. I would really highly recommend it. It's really loud, really noisy, really lo-fi, really punky, and just lots of fun. A great Welsh band. I also listened to, on August's recommendation, I listened to Shinsei Kamate-chan's Sumane, which is kind of like a Japanese noise pop Odyssey. Like it's there's a lot of sounds happening on this record. It's very eclectic, but it's just absolutely, I haven't heard anything like it. And it's exactly the kind of record that I haven't heard anything like that I love, because it's introducing me to kind of new sounds that I haven't heard another band create, that are really tuneful, that are really engaging, that are really stimulating. And it's just a really,
I'm so happy you liked it.
It's probably...
I'm so happy you liked it, and I agree with what you're saying. It's a great album, and I'm really happy you liked it.
I am doubly happy.
A few other albums I want to shout out. I also listened to System of a Down's self-titled debut, another August core record, which I really loved. I think I like it more than Toxicity. In fact, I know I like it more than Toxicity.
Opinion.
It's a more consistent record than that one is, even if it doesn't have Chop Suey on it. But few records do. But it's a great album.
Only one might say.
I listened to Biffy Clyro's...
have a greatest hits record. That might have it as well.
I listened to Biffy Clyro's Only Revolutions on Saoirse's recommendation, my first Biffy Clyro album. That's a great record too. Highly recommend. That's another one that's in our bracket that I really thoroughly enjoyed. I listened to... what else did I listen to? I listened to...
I will tell you, your time is up. But
I'll quickly... I've got two more records.
You only have like
mention.
2 or 3 more records.
Yeah, I've only got 2 more to mention.
Okay.
One of them is Miles Davis's Nefertiti, which is one of the albums he made, one of about a handful of albums he made with his second great quintet in the mid to late 60s. My favorite album of that quintet era, I know Miles Smiles is generally the more beloved album in that set, but I like Nefertiti more. I think it's more unconventional. I think it does more challenging things with jazz as a form, even though obviously all those records in that era are quite... groundbreaking, and Miles Smiles is a classic as well. But yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the second quintet were the records he made immediately before he made In a Silent Way and Bitches Brew. But the second quintet section of Miles' career is amazing, and Nefertiti is underrated as fuck. And the other record I listened to that I want to shout out is I continued my journey through the 5 acts of the Deer Hunters 5-act series, quintilogy, if that's a word. I don't know if it is. But yeah, Life and Death, this one is called. Easily the best of the 3 so far. The most consistent, the most consistently engaging, and the most well produced. And even like there were certain songs on here that I think I said to Jake were like bang on imitation of the Mars Volta. Like they sound like they were ripped right from Francis the Mute, which is strange. It's not like that for the whole album, but the first couple songs, that's really tangible. And it's a really fun and engaging, and the storytelling is, Jake told me it would be, the storytelling was much more compelling. They seem to be kind of finding themselves more and more with each record in terms of like what they are as a cohesive act, and I really loved it. And yeah, that was a lot of records, but I had a great week musically.
Regarding Act 3, let me just recreate this meme here. Yes.
That's
that was you had the headset and everything.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, that's what we've been listening to.
So what do we have up first? Is it Jessie Ware or Boris?
I believe that Jessie Ware is up first. Yeah.
All right, Tyler, you're probably the most
does it matter
here.
I think I'd probably like to go last on this one.
Okay, who wants to introduce the record?
I can introduce it though.
Yeah,
okay,
why don't you introduce it, because you probably know the most.
Okay, so Jessie Ware is a pop musician, singer-songwriter, trodden in the world of kind of dance music and new disco and that kind of sort of scene. I'm going to talk a lot more about kind of the musical influences of this record when I get to my review, but this is her 4th album. She struck it big, I think, in 2012 with her debut Devotion, but then kind of fell off the radar a little bit with the next few albums, and this is kind of like a return to form, many are saying that it is. And yeah, so this is has arrived with quite a bit of bluster and quite a bit of acclaim. And yeah, I will let the rest of you go first, and I will speak at length on this once you're all done.
Okay, who wants to?
I'll do it. Fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, we should just go an acronym order. Al.
Okay, this will mainly just because, like, I don't know what anybody really thinks of this album other than Tyler, but I'm still anticipating this will be a repeat of the first episode in a slight sense, I guess, in that. Look, I tried. I tried a lot, but this album is boring as shit. Let me elaborate.
Please.
I don't know if
Tyler's
it's
just
maybe
seething.
Yep. I don't know if maybe it's because the different parts of Jessie's influence are mostly taken from things that I don't, not that I don't even vibe with, just things that are a bit outside my area of expertise, perhaps. But what I do know is that I know when I am having fun to a danceable, pop-adjacent album, and when one is doing nothing for me. And really, the sad thing about this album was that on repeated listens, every problem I had with it got worse. That being, I think the biggest problem I have with the album as a whole is not the homogeneousness of the sound specifically. I think it's a pretty diverse record when it comes to its sonic aesthetics. That being said, every single song here, I don't know, maybe you could mathematically come and break this album down to me in a way that would be a bit more like constructive, or just tell me that I'm flat fucking wrong, but every song is structured exactly the same way, where it has a rise, a build, and then plateaus straight on until it ends. And that's fine. This is, there are so many other variables in your music that could allow this to be a viable approach for a song. Many people have done it. But the problem here is that it's every song, and once you hit that plateau in the middle, I'm just kind of sitting there like...
Jake, you're demonstrating
Oh.
a fundamental lack of understanding about dance music and how it works. And it's really funny, I'm sorry.
Oh no!
Okay. Fundamental... What?
Sorry, just real quick. I watching Tyler through this whole thing is so beautiful. He's questioning everything.
Fundamental or not, I don't engage with music on a genre level. I can filter it through genre and I can evaluate it through genre, but when it comes to experience, I don't care. And the effect this had on me, especially over and over again, was that it was like, wow, if you asked me to get up and dance to this, I wouldn't want to. So that kind of leaves me at an impasse, even though I do have more specific complaints here, mainly with the production. Microcosm here being the tinny synths on Soul Control are annoying as hell, and the album has fucking moments like this everywhere. Let me finish.
This motherfucker said tinny synths on this album.
This album sounds cheap and plasticky and gimmicky as fuck. Every time I listened to it, I was just like, wow, am I supposed to be impressed here? Because I'm not. And then, when you combine this and these moments with these repetitive song structures, it made this nigh unbearable to revisit after the second time. There are plenty of compliments I can throw at it. Jessie has a fantastic voice. That is undeniable. Consistently great vocal performances around the bend. It's great. I think that the production is not universally terrible. I just think that it constantly changes itself to the point where on one minute I'll be digging it, and in the next minute a new sonic idea will be introduced, and it sounds terrible.
I can't believe this
And
motherfucker
then-
said Soul Control sounds like garbage.
Soul Control, I'm gonna be adamant there. Soul Control annoys the fuck out of me. I get to that album and it's like pinpricks on my spine. And let's just, it sounds artificial and janky, especially at the end of Soul Control, by the way. And it just changes between being way too sparse and way too cluttered and no in between at all. And that leads me to sitting there and again being like, what am I getting out of this? And the answer is most often nothing. And when everything is so hit or miss, I can only award this album so many accolades. It is a moment-to-moment basis onto whether or not I am enjoying myself and listening to it. And when I am not enjoying myself, consistently kept overriding the enjoyment. The last song is good. There. Fuck you.
Can I leap on this? Because I feel like the perspective I have might help bridge the gap here somewhat.
This is already my favorite segment we've ever done on this entire podcast.
I didn't drink this for nothing.
Okay.
God, I'm gonna get
All right.
fucking drunk.
Can I leap on this though? If that's all right.
Go ahead. Go.
Okay.
Have someone agree with me, for fuck's sake.
Well, I like it more than you. I'm sorry.
Of course you do. Everyone does, I'm sure.
I have some sympathy with your point of view, and I think we have the album rated the same on the music
Mine's
board.
slightly lower than yours.
Oh, I downgraded it on my last listen by half a star.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but anyway, I feel like it's hard for me to adequately review this without listening to it in a really sweaty nightclub with. I just can't move for people with this album playing on the stereo in full. I feel like if I haven't done that, I can't really give an adequate review. That's why you're meant to.
I like that you're saying that, Saoirse, because I don't think, I mean, obviously
like
not everyone can listen to this album on the actual dance floor, but like, if you're not like dancing when you're listening to it, then I feel like you're also doing it wrong.
Yeah, I can totally imagine that if
you're
I
not
was in a nightclub,
sweating, you're not sweating yourself to death and on ecstasy, you're not listening to this right.
Like, it's not an album that you like sit in a chair with your headphones on, like head down on the laptop listening to. Like, it's not an intellectual album.
I'm not. I'm really not.
I'm not
I
saying
do
that
take-
to refute Jake. I'm just saying it as a point.
I do take issue with that approach somewhat. I
do
mean,
too.
like, it does find it kind of feels a little too close to being like, to enjoy Bon Iver's Forever forever ago, you have to fuck off to Wisconsin.
Yeah,
I sit in an empty forest.
Absolutely.
There's a line you have to
Absolutely
tread,
get
I think.
but that's
between...
that's not what I'm saying though. Like I just
No.
I'm saying it's like I imagine that some of the tracks I like a bit less, like Soul Control, I would enjoy a lot more in that setting. If I'm just already predisposed to the vibes. And like vibes are how I tend to interact with an album the deepest on a first listen, and it tends to what keeps me coming back for the same things later, especially given the fact that I'm like on the spectrum. My experience of the world is very textural. That's why I've been fiddling with this already cap opener the whole time. It's just like the feeling of the grooves and the bumps is very stimulating.
Someone with similar
So I
problems,
like
I
records.
empathize with you deeply here.
Yeah, so
This whole episode.
I tend to interact with a lot. I tend to interact with music a lot like that as well. That's why I really love King Gizzard so much, I suppose, is that their music is so textured. Things I like about this album is I think the mixing is competent on every song.
That's true.
It's all very smooth. I can hear every instrument. And I think the sound they were trying to go for, they achieved. I think Jessie is a fantastic singer. And I think the lyrical perspective on it, and sort of how openly horny it is very refreshing.
Very much so.
Though I could say the same about Chilombo, which I like more. And that, I think, hits the buttons I want from that lyrical perspective more, although it's not really for me to say what people with that perspective should be saying. So there's that. But I think it opens really strongly. I think Spotlight and What's Your Pleasure are two really, really good sort of synth pop, housey, dance pop songs. I actually really like the way in which this combines sort of house aesthetics and sort of what's happening at the moment with the sort of new wave of 80s inspired synth pop.
Yeah,
I
and
think this album
I'm gonna
blends
talk about
those.
that as well. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. I remember when I talked about the Lady Gaga record, we talked about this album. I haven't heard this album yet, though.
Yeah.
And yeah, these are both trying to blend the new wave of 80s synth pop and house. This does it so much smoother. Like, when you were combining those two genres, the one thing it can't be is ear grating, which the Gaga record is, and this isn't.
Yeah. Also, like, there's no real actual songwriting on the Gaga record either. It's just kind of like there's incredibly
no Swedish songwriters.
Well, no, like it's very much just kind of like a formula is being followed on every song. Whereas I know Jake's already said to the contrary here, but I think that this is a very kind of refreshingly unformulaic record in a lot of ways structurally, in terms of how the songs are put together.
That's fair. Yeah, I really like the first two songs. I really like the last two songs. I think those are the four best tracks on the record.
That's a good top four.
Thank you. I think The Kill builds in a wonderful way.
Kill builds?
I think The Kill by 30 Seconds to Mars.
The whole
Remember,
just kept getting worse.
Remember Where You Are is a really satisfying song. Outside of that, I think because I like music so texturally, and because this is a mix that I feel like it's just going to, like, it's a smooth mix and I can hear all the instruments clearly. Nothing else about the album is triggering my sort of textural buttons outside of that. And when it's like a lot of very extended, like, I know this trip of house music. I've been in many a nightclub. I understand.
That makes one of us.
Those sort of plateaus at the ends of songs. When it's like an album of that, yeah, I feel like I just want a bit more stimulation in those moments.
But
that's a very me problem.
How do you two feel about like Daft Punk's Discovery, for example?
Oh, I don't like Daft Punk at all.
Okay.
I've not listened to it in full, so I can't comment, but I like...
I like them more than this, granted.
Right, I would just say, though, about this record and Daft Punk, is I really like... I have not heard a Daft Punk record in full, but I've heard loads of their songs, and I really like all of their songs. I do think on many of their songs, Daft Punk have more things I can texturally respond to, so like a Stronger, Harder, and all that. Although with their latest music, with songs like Get Lucky, there really isn't. But I can take that song in an individual song-sized bit. I feel like if I was to listen to all of these songs stuck in a playlist at a nightclub, I wouldn't have the problem because I would engage with it as like a 3-minute thing instead of a 40, 50-minute thing. And
if I can just add a note real quick, my thing with, because this isn't in my notes, but my thing with Daft Punk is that they'll take like 2 or 3 elements and they'll repeat them for 6 minutes. This record will take 5 or 6 elements and do the same thing over 4 minutes. So I think it's a much more compelling listen than anything Daft Punk have done.
No, I mean, I like the album overall. My rating is above a 5. For spoilers. But basically, there's that whole stretch in the middle from Ooh La La to Mirage where it's just like, I'm getting gradually more tired. And gradually more, I just want something else to be happening at this point. Like, they're all good and they're all written well, but it's just very like, when Mirage comes around, I am very, very tired. So I'm really glad it ends so strongly, because or else I feel like I really would have a problem with this album that I don't have. But yeah, I just wanted to give some flavor to what Jake's saying that might make our collective problems a bit more clear and less sort of actively provocative.
No, I certainly don't think either of you are being provocative. And I want to say for the record as well, for all of my exaggerated reactions, I'm very grateful and glad that Jake gave this record multiple listens and really like sat with it. And
I mean, I tried. Like,
I know,
different days,
I
different
respect that.
mindsets.
I respect that, and I understand like that it didn't work for you. And I'm obviously bigging up a lot of my reactions for the sake of the podcast and entertainment.
No,
but,
of course.
But I do kind of respect entirely where you're coming from, even if I don't understand quite significant portions of it.
The synth sounded tinny. What is this?
I think this man has never heard a
Right.
synth in his life.
More
Yeah,
like
me.
synth.
Never heard a synth in my
Am I
life.
right?
Looks at vinyl of Emotion right next to him.
It's another record I'm going to be bringing up in my discussion too.
And because it's
Right,
mid, and because this
not-
is better.
Don't think it's mid. It's a
This is
great
the
album.
one.
Shut up.
Not
The only thing
Carly Rae Jepsen.
The only thing I can get past is the thinking the artwork is acceptable, but also
Right.
like thinking this is bad.
Well, I mean,
The
I
thing
guess.
about the artwork
talk about
is, like,
comparing like a basket of muffins to an elephant there, bro.
it's
I
the
don't
difference
fucking
between, like,
know.
Which
I would say
is
it's the
which?
difference
I need to
between,
know
like, a
now.
David-
Which is which, Jay?
we're comparing an album that's aiming for like
This is definitely a basket of elephants in that
a mi-
analogy.
we're comparing albums that are going for like a Michelangelo type texture to a David Lowery type texture in terms of painting. It's like
I like
it's
that.
just
I like that.
not.
You're both overthinking my point. It's just one of these
Right.
albums sounds good and one of them sounds bad. That's my only point.
Very good.
Well,
No.
see, that's the thing though, is that I feel like you can further elaborate on that because, like, yeah, the artwork does sound bad, but that sound is in service of something. This is an album that is meant to be taken at face value in a very primal way that you are supposed to get up and move to, and it does not have that effect on me at all.
Well, if I may get more specific, the keyboard horns set on What's Your Pleasure on the title track on here do sound very similar to the MIDI horns on the artwork. They are in completely different contexts.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue that, but they sound very similar. And I don't know. It
Well,
messes me
the
up.
MIDI horns were one of my least favorite parts of the artwork. Like, I don't really particularly care for them on there.
The
But
horn textures
here-
sound good here, I think, because they're mixed low and they're not the main focus of the track. They're a
I would agree to an extent. I think they sound better than on the artwork.
But like they're like no, whoever said that was right because they serve totally different purposes on those albums. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
just
yeah,
want
it's
to put one
totally.
thing on the end of my
The
review.
fact
by
that they're
way,
the
just very
same
quickly.
instrument is like almost incidental in this comparison.
Well, and not to mention the artwork is something that I explicitly talk about in terms of like approaching it from a conceptual
Yeah.
level of like with as just an immediate thing, whereas this album is supposed to be taken at face value and enjoyed like traditional music would be enjoyed, whereas I do not view the artwork as traditional music, which pretentious, sure, but that's just not how I approach these two things. It would be the
Right.
difference between approaching a Caretaker album and The Weeknd's After Hours.
I
Like,
don't think it's pretentious, Jake, because it's just a different way of explaining why you enjoy something. Like
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
perfectly valid
just
to enjoy
personally,
something for
I-
conceptual reasons.
I just want to say, just personally, I do really enjoy the artwork on a visceral, experiential level.
Yeah.
Me too.
Like, yeah, I can approach it on an intellectual level, but I have a much better time letting the abrasiveness of the music affect me emotionally than intellectually. If better time is the right word. Also, I just want to tack on the end of my review of the Jessie Ware that the bass, and I've said this so many times on this podcast, but it's true, is the real hero here. The bass guitar, the bass synth lines.
The
They're
bass,
just
the
doing
bass is great. on
all
this
of the
album.
work.
It's really good.
All
Yeah.
of the work.
Yes.
I would not
I
say it
agree.
does all the work, but I would say that it is a
No,
star.
no,
pupil.
it's an exaggeration. But yes, that's a better way of putting it.
That's it.
Very good.
And as just making an offhanded joke more than anything, we didn't need to go back into the
Well, I know, but I just wanted to elaborate just because I feel like it's still worth noting.
Yeah, we've been
At least
sitting
they
on
get where
that,
I'm coming from.
We've been sitting on that artwork discussion for a week now, so things fester like that.
Yeah,
Anyway, who wants to attack Jessie Ware next? Not in the
yeah,
literal-
Morgan and August. The people I had no idea what they would think about
Well,
this.
let's return to the order, shall we, and let August go next.
Okay.
That's not a crack at you, Saoirse, because I think you were right to come in.
No, I
You,
don't.
you contrasted Jake really
It
well.
is a
but-
crack at her. He is antagonistic.
It is
Take a crack at me.
antagonistic. That much is true.
Yeah.
I haven't had any physical
August,
contact in a long time.
Please
take a crack
do
at me.
begin, but I'm just going to go to
No.
the toilet really quickly, but
I
please do
will.
begin.
Yeah. Let's make fun of Tyler while he's gone.
Oh God, what a fucking loser!
What a fucking loser.
Likes this
Jessie Ware.
bleepy bloop ass shit.
He likes dance music.
He likes to
Or
dance
Tekken
and
will,
have
like
fun.
autocorrect.
What a
Um,
nerd.
Now you
I'm
see,
glad-
guys, this album's very eclectic. It's got all these eclectic sounds across it.
No, Tekken.
The best part about that was that your accent was so awful, except for on the word eclectic, which it was perfect for.
The real question
Can't
is,
take
is
us.
any of this
This is-
staying in?
This
No,
is
it's
very
all
this is,
singing.
this is a very eclectic album. Very fun. It's got so many moving parts that, and I just it's so
I know
eclectic.
it's really like the band Tiny.
Or
It's
Tekka
the band Tiny
live
Moving
album.
Parts, you know.
Now you see, I
Tiny
think
Moving
of
Parts,
this
they do
more
have
as
a
a
lot of moving
collection of
parts.
ideas than a record.
Yes, this week I listened to a 4-hour-long live Ortega album.
I hope I edit this because I'm not going to cut a single moment of it out. August,
So
keep going.
anyways,
Keep going.
He won't
What's
either.
your pleasure? What's Your Pleasure by Jessie Ware. It's a sad day. It's a sad day when I'm on Tyler's side with the record. Because I think What's Your Pleasure is actually pretty awesome. We start off with the opener Spotlight, which is fantastic. I love the way this
Fuck
song
yes, it is.
progresses. It just builds on itself. And look, as a loser who spent his entire middle school years listening to like French house, Japanese city pop, American synth pop, what I can say about Jessie Ware is what she does so exceptionally is she takes all these blends of dance across this record, and I believe she just beautifully sews together so many influences that that this record just sounds brilliant. Like just to quickly tackle on the song Soul Control, which just has this fantastically hooky chorus. So control. Like I
Doing
was
one vocal line there, are you, August?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I was
I'm
just
not singing, so don't.
No, I know you're not.
I'm not going
I
to
was
sing.
just I was tapping my foot to that like the whole week. And that song sounds like it could have just been translated and ripped straight off of like a I don't know, Mariah Taniguchi record. That's a butchering of her name, but she's good.
Why don't you just combined Mariah Carey and Anamanaguchi?
That's what I
No,
was
it's,
thinking too. The thing is about Soul Control is it could have been a hit for like Madonna in like the 80s.
Yeah,
Seriously.
absolutely.
But it doesn't sound like totally derivative. It sounds like an actual song that's as good as songs from that era, I think.
No,
I agree.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the thing. It's and really her vocal performances across this whole album are just spellbinding. Like every second I'm there with her, I feel. And that's also complemented by this album's production, which has so many subtle little choices across the whole thing, which I'm sure Tyler will tackle on more in his review. But just all these little sounds and ideas just build upon each other throughout this whole record, making this very impactful record. I would say even Ware's Ooh La La trumps Run the Jewels Ooh La La, because I think
Two songs that are only similar in title alone.
Ooh.
Only
So the
similar
way-
in title alone.
I just want to
Which
point out
was
that
kind of mid on the albums.
But August
I
is right.
just want to
August
point out
is
that
right.
everyone climbed up my ass for the artwork comparison, and now August is
Well, this
just
is,
like,
I mean, they're both worlds apart, but this is like at least there's something tangible thread.
And I mean, on that particular track, I just love the snare drums throughout it. Just the way those echo and ring and just
It's so good. It's so good.
It's
That song
beautiful.
is fucking amazing.
Save a Kiss. As Saoirse mentioned, with like the bass, that is a song where I think the bass is an absolute hero because it just switches up from everything that's
Totally.
come before. Yeah, and it just hits you in a different way.
That's such
And
a
even
great
though
house
this,
song.
it's so good. Like lyrically, a lot of what you're getting on this record, I feel, isn't like terribly like it's not like worlds apart of songwriting. It's all very homogenized. But what makes it so like every track stand out on its own right is that the songwriting, not the songwriting, the instrumentals backing those songs are just so. There's so much to soak up and absorb, and it really just worlds of depth there. Like I could pick apart a bunch of these instrumentals and what I like
And just like,
about them.
I want to add to that as well. The mix, there is a lot going on in terms of the mixes here in most of these tracks, but they're never overly busy. It's not like bunch of stuff is being chucked in to make the songs fuller. It's that every element
Whatever you
is adding
say,
to the feel of the
Chief.
song.
No,
Right, Jake.
I mean, yeah, I would agree there fully. Like everything needs to, well, maybe not everything needs to be there, but the way this record is constructed, it makes it feel like everything needs to be there.
Yeah.
These songs would feel fundamentally different without like some synth track cut from it.
I know, but and like all this, the additions of like strings and horns and additional synth and stuff,
yes,
they're not just thrown in there. They're often doing counter melodies, or they're just building on a melodic idea or a musical idea that's already been introduced. It's really intricate stuff. It's really impressive.
No, and yeah, that's why I mentioned that's why I mentioned the diverse influences of this album, in that when you look at it, if you're just looking at it from like a laser focused view, it'll seem kind of random. But if you consider it in the context of house music, it seems so purposeful.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I don't even think you need to have that context, but it certainly does help.
It does help. You do make a fair point. Maybe not. Yeah. But I guess after the halfway point, I do find my enjoyment falling off just a tiny bit, not much. I mean, still though, you've got great songs like In Your Eyes and Step Into My Life. They do feel a little, it is a little weird having those songs back to back because they to my ears, they feel a bit redundant in the track list, not by much though. Yeah, my biggest issue here is I just kind of wish some of the tracks were longer. I just wish this record I wish I was just in Jessie Ware's world for longer than I am.
That's quite
Wow,
quite the
agree.
accidental compliment. So.
Call it what it is. Stockholm syndrome.
No, it's
what
absolutely.
I disagree with August. I think this record, none of these songs need to be any longer than they are. Like, I think it's a perfect length. But I understand August's perspective as well, because I've listened to the album a number of times, so I clearly enjoy being in Jessie's world.
No, I enjoy her worlds
Hun.
too. I just kind of wish I was there for longer than like 50 minutes. I wish I was there for like an hour or so. But yeah, pretty much.
Might I recommend, August, the other albums of Jessie Ware?
No, fair point. I did not. I guess the only reason I was hesitant to actually go back to those, like go and listen to those, was because I am under the understanding that this is like her best record by a significant margin.
I've only heard Devotion, and it's a very good record. So I would recommend that one. But I mean, her other two middle records might be good as well. I haven't heard them. But yeah, Devotion's really good.
No, yeah. I mean, I agree with your point fully that I would like to go back and listen to some of her other records just because this just gives me the inkling. I want to do it. I just, I just love the diversity of this record, just the diverse amount of influence. The sound of it's fantastic. Yeah. What else can I say? Like it a lot.
Very good.
Word.
I did not expect. There was a while where I was just thinking maybe this is going to be like 1 against 4 or like 4 against 1, and I was really scared of that. So it's quite nice that someone
What is the
else...
difference, Tyler, in 1 against 4 and 4 against 1?
I don't know the real. I don't know.
The person who's right.
Energy. Let the boy live.
Yeah, I
Saoirse,
mean-
let the boy live.
It's an energy thing. I mean, there could be like 4 people ganging up on somebody, or like one person passionately defending someone against 4 people who are
Dark
Yeah, that's
energy.
I'll go with that.
Morgan, do you want to tell us what you think of the album?
Yes, I suppose I do. You know,
So let me just crack open another.
yeah.
Cracking open a cold one with the music critics.
One of the most long one of the longest running jokes we have on this podcast is that I only like the music with the loud electric guitars.
And he should be allowed to say that.
and I
said
like
the
music
kid in
with
the
loud
Misfits
acoustic
shirt.
guitars.
What? Morgan's in the Misfits shirt, not Tyler, Jake.
That's what I said.
Let's just forget it.
Yeah,
Let's move
Morgan,
on.
what do you think?
So it's, and I feel like a lot of the times, especially last week when we got to the Arca record, it kind of felt like I just started repeating my thoughts on a lot of albums, where it just basically kind of boiled down to like, I don't really get it. It's not really my thing. And that kind of made it difficult to approach from a more critical perspective. And going into this record, I was fully prepared for it to be the same thing again. And this is an excellent record. So that was a nice.
Fuck
yeah!
Come on!
I knew it. I
That
knew
was
it. Knew
just-
I'd be the lone voice of dissent.
Get in!
Well, Saoirse's right there, so maybe
She gave
maybe
the album a good score. So
climb off the cross there. We need the wood. Yeah.
like
this
the
is
match
such-
next to my ass.
No. What?
Fuck you.
Okay. Yeah, this is such. I am not really familiar with dance music beyond like the Daft Punk singles that were playing on the radio when Random Access Memories came out. That's really about as far as my knowledge on the genre goes. But I found this to be like just so consistently compelling. I will agree that it maybe drops a little bit in the middle portion. I think it starts and ends very strong in the middle, is just less strong by merit
Yeah,
of being
I
surrounded
would
by
agree.
really strong stuff. I wouldn't say that any of it's outwardly bad. It's just the parts that are less compelling, and that's all they really are, you know. But you know, talk about like a mission statement for your album. Spotlight is such a fantastic song.
Isn't it
And-
though?
It's just the groove it sets down after it builds. You're just immediately like, oh, okay. And it's just like that through the whole record after that, pretty much. And it's just it engages sort of like something primal in me, where there's like a need for a solid groove or like an immediate hook that I don't even get in a lot of the records that are like, you know, the 90-minute long progressive rock records with a huge expansive guitars. You know, there's something really, as I said, primal about this album that I really appreciate that runs throughout the whole thing, which does directly tie into just how horny it is.
Oh yes.
It's just everything about it feels like that
yeah.
scene in The Matrix Reloaded where Morpheus gives that big old speech and then they just throw down in Zion. Like that's the soundtrack to that scene. Man, it's so good. And like it's also interesting in the ways that this is kind of a throwback record. It like interestingly feels like sort of like the dance music that came out in like the 2000s, late 90s, you know, and which is not a subgenre or era of music that I'm all that familiar with, but there's something immediate about the way that it's like, oh, this is definitely like a record that's cut out of a different cloth than the typical, you know, Chromatica, for instance. You know, there's a genuineness to the way that it's a throwback in a way that is like really compelling, I think. Yeah, I don't suppose my thoughts are all that in depth. Saoirse already said one of the points that I was going to bring up, and that the bass work on this album is immense. And while it's not necessarily the MVP of every song, I would say it is the MVP of the album, just for laying such a rich and textured backbone to every other texture that the album lays on top of it. And like, there's not very much that the album could do without the really immense instrumental deftness that the bass displays in particular. Yeah, I mean, it's really good. I really like it. No one's more surprised than me.
I'm surprised and thrilled.
I had a sneaking suspicion you'd really like it, to be honest.
I don't know why. I guess in retrospect, I don't know why I thought this would be like a 4-against-1 situation, but because I don't see this as like I can't really see how this would be a particularly polarizing record, but I mean, whatever. It's fine.
I think Jake and I are both just kind of mid.
Yeah.
So I
don't think it's very good.
I love Jake. I love that. I love that you're really sticking to that. Like, it's
I love that you're really sticking to this stupid hill that you're dying on.
Yeah.
Fuck you! It's my opinion. Get off my ass, you piece of shit.
It's a joke. How about you calm down?
How about you get off your fucking high horse, you prick? Let Tyler talk.
How about you stop drinking every episode?
I love how you're begging Morgan to let me talk when all I'm going to do is basically refute every point you've made, Jake.
Jake, you need to stop drinking in every episode. Like, come on, like, you just got to stop.
This is our thing. We're all alcoholics, except for August. And Morgan, I suppose.
He's underage.
All right.
Excuse me, don't ignore the fact I don't have an ID. I need to drink to be cool on my podcast.
Very good. All right. Shall I begin?
Shall we begin?
Then we'll begin. All right. Okay. So, Jessie Ware, what's your pleasure? A lot of artists. Yes.
It depends who's asking.
Like the album title. A lot of artists in the past 10 years, a lot of artists actually, have mined the sounds of the 70s and 80s, specifically dance and synth pop music of that era, to bring those distinctly analog synth sounds into a polished, fully synthetic digital age. One of the most influential acts in this regard are, of course, Daft Punk, who have been doing it for over 20 years, but who struck a particular kind of cultural gold with 2013's Random Access Memories and its unexpected year-defining lead single, Get Lucky. Since then, you've had a number of artists receive critical success for pop records that tread in a similar kind of line, incorporating principles of funk and disco, but through a distinctly radio-friendly, synth-driven guise. Carly Rae Jepsen's Emotion comes to mind, of course, as does the more recent Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa. Daft Punk were, of course, not the first to do this either. Madonna's Confessions on a Dance Floor and Robyn's Body Talk are both very important records that paved the way for this new revival and sound. But there is a key flaw inherent in all of these records, either to a lesser or greater extent, and that is that while those albums all reach undeniable, thrilling highs, they don't quite consistently sustain that greatness throughout their duration. So random
Debatably.
Debatably. Random Access Memories has Within and Beyond, and if you can't remember what they sound like, there you go. Emotion has LA Hallucinations and Let's Get Lost. Confessions on a Dance Floor has I Love New York and Push. Body Talk has We Dance to the Beat and Love Kills.
Future Nostalgia is the last 2 tracks on that record.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Thank you for completing my sentence. Yeah, so there are flaws on all of these influential and undeniably important albums. What's Your Pleasure? The new album from Jessie Ware has no such low points, in my opinion. Certainly, it has some tracks that reach stratospheric highs. And as such, other tracks are necessarily more minimal and atmospheric to balance a record out. But there are no weak points here, in my opinion. No chinks in the armor. Jessie has constructed a perfect dance record, melding seamlessly elements of classic disco, funk, synth pop, and house music, as though she were a seasoned professional. And yet, none of her records up to this point could have predicted such a refined, instantly classic feeling album. Consider Spotlight, the best song on the album, in my opinion, and one of the greatest pieces of disco that I have ever heard. It opens with this ethereal, beautiful vocal passage that demonstrates Ware's deft hand for melody and range, before this gorgeous, bubbling synth melody comes in and the song develops an instantly addictive, catchy swing. The chorus itself has this wonderful, airy glide, with vocals that approach and recede and then dance wickedly around the central hook. This is the kind of thing that Daft Punk would hear and just retire. I don't know.
Well, they retired sometime before that, it seems, but
they're still around. They're scoring. Who are they scoring?
Dario
They're scoring
Argento.
Yeah, that's right. So they're still around, kicking it.
That's gonna be so.
Yeah,
good.
because that's gonna happen.
Yeah. So this is the kind of thing they would hear and retire, I think, because they've never done anything as good as this song. I don't know that they or anyone in the past 20 years has created a piece of dance pop that is this delectably beguiling, gorgeously composed, and utterly addictive. I've heard this song at least 24 times, and I marvel more and more with each listen at how immaculately it is constructed. It has a perfect bridge as well that adds to the building tension of the track, and it crests beautifully with all elements of the mix simmering together at its climax. Seductive, fun, delightful, and absolutely the highlight of her career so far. I think Spotlight is the best pop single of the year so far, for sure. The title track follows. It introduces more immaculately mixed synths playing classic melodies. And that's the thing as well. The synth lines here on this record are for the most part not original, but they don't need to be. This is disco revival. This is a tribute to a golden era that simultaneously manages to feel as though it belongs there and has also fallen through a rift in time to arrive with us only now. The tremendous success of What's Your Pleasure is not in originality, but in taking familiar elements and imbuing them with creative production choices, vocal melodies, and Ware's irresistible personality. It is all the disco that fans will have grown up with, but with new, fresher, more invigorated sounds than ever before. This particular song, the title track, is reminiscent of another synth pop milestone of my childhood, which is Goldfrapp's album Black Cherry, which if you don't know the album, you will know the main singles. It's an album where, and Jessie on this record sounds remarkably similar to Alison Goldfrapp on that album. The talent for hooks on this track is as strong as it is on the opening track, with at least 3 or 4 of them loaded into the single song. Note also the subtly freaky synth stabs that penetrate the track's underbelly, adding a thrilling edge, and these processed horn sounds we already talked about that fill out the mix quite nicely. There's a lot going on here, and never does it feel overly busy, muddy, or difficult to follow. These mixes are layered to perfection in service of songs that are some of the best that the genre has ever seen. Ooh La La introduces an irresistible, chunky bass melody that clearly borrows heavily from InXS's Need You Tonight riff, but complicates it adding a new counter melody to fill that riff out nicely. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go listen to Need You Tonight and then listen to the bass riff on this song back to back. Very similar, except Need You Tonight is kind of half of the riff here, whereas this one fills it out in a really complicated and interesting way.
Yeah, I never put that together, but when you said it, it was like, oh yeah.
The way that the bass in the song is layered in the track immediately indicates it as the song's driving force, with a more spacious and sparse mix than the previous two tracks, but still these gorgeous, gentle stabs of guitar, what sound like cowbell, and these wavering synths that altogether these elements are actually reminiscent of all things LCD sound system, which I suppose also borrowed from the same kind of sets of influences. This song, in a lot of ways, could be an LCD sound system song if it were sung by James Murphy. Again, the talent for hooks here is as present as ever. And though the mix is spacious, there's a really effective building and release of tension multiple times throughout the track that keeps it engaging and also really kind of like impossible not to nod your head or dance to. In fact, another point I want to make, holy shit, is this album fun to dance to. Like, I'm not normally much of a dancer, but you throw any of these songs on, and I know for a fact that no matter where I am, I will barely be able to help myself. The hooks and the grooves...
I was just gonna say, I'm just trying to imagine Tyler throwing down now, and it's not quite there. I'll have to see it in person.
The mental
true.
image is pretty great. I'm not gonna lie.
The hooks and the grooves.
The hooks and grooves.
The gooks and the grooves.
The hooks and the grooves here just grab you, sink their teeth in, and don't let go. Speaking of danceability, single Soul Control ups the ante even further with another gorgeous bass synth groove beneath the sharp plinking melodic keyboard melody. Again, I have to compliment Ware's skill with hooks here. Every single line delivery on this song is catchy. Everything on the verses immediately gets stuck in your head. The pre-chorus has been stuck at the front of my brain for 2 damn weeks. And then the chorus itself, this absolutely addictive release, is like descending on a roller coaster once you reach the top. At this point, the album is 4 for 4 in terms of instant classic disco tracks, in my opinion. And that rounds out one of the most impressive, downright staggering runs on any dance record that has been released during my lifetime, I think. I'm talking very hyperbolically, I know, but I am familiar enough with this record at this point to feel completely confident in what I'm saying.
Well, you also never talk hyperbolically, so, I mean...
Yeah, I'm famous for never, ever doing that. Okay.
I exaggerate more than anyone in the world.
The consistency...
Well, hey! Boom, boom.
Yeah,
Very
anyone ever tell y'all that you're a bunch of smart asses?
I was gonna say, damn. Pile on, Morgan.
The consistency, though. The consistency does not drop off from here, though. Fifth track, Save a Kiss, has a similar building tension to the other tracks. And though it's a little less embellished and more straightforward, it's no less compelling to me. The synths here are just absolutely propulsive, underlying the emotion of the track, which is this nostalgic missing of the person closest to you, where the distance and time until you next get to see them feels insurmountable, but you cling to that optimism anyway. This kind of exemplifies, I think, what also elevates these already instrumentally perfect songs to classic status. The subject matter, as with all such records in this vein, is fairly straightforward. This direct and seemingly inherent connection between the joyous release of dancing and the joyous release of love and human connection. But Jessie taps into the absolute urgency of both of these things as well, and the overwhelming emotional and psychological effect of that urgency. And what results are songs that are not just catchy and propulsive, but frequently breathtaking in their presentation. The low-key mood of this part of the record continues with the closure of the first half, Adore You, which has these very pretty nocturnal synth plinks over which gorgeous waves of rushing synths gently build and Ware flexes her vocal muscles, repeating simple, elemental refrains, but allowing her voice to ascend the scale in a really impressive way, I think. The direct nature of the lyricism here, lean in, go slow, don't go, is effective, and it matches well with the more impactfully straightforward instrumental. And Jessie's descent into wordless coos by the end of the song effectively completes the gradual deconstruction in the lyrics of the song, as if to underline the point that the need she feels for this person is so powerful that words can't properly express it. The second half of the album begins with a seductive slow build of In Your Eyes, which actually conveys more complex emotions than you might initially think, or certainly than I initially thought. There is this notion in the lyrics of dancing in someone's eyes, but not as a blind infatuation like it might have been in the previous song, but almost as a desperate attempt to distract from confronting a more complex set of emotions that she feels for this person. An awareness of the inevitable pain that their relationship would bring or has brought, and a conscious decision to ignore all of that for as long as they're on the dance floor. It gets that notion of the club as escapism, and it nails it to the core. And the effect of that is quite powerful, I think. It's complemented nicely as well with a smoother, less complex instrumental that conveys the sensation of losing yourself through the hypnotic grooves and the ethereal vocal layering. Step Into My Life returns to the catchiness of the first half of the record, with this dramatic instrumental featuring these cinematic strings that underline the staccato delivery of that hook. Step into my life. Jessie's deft ability to switch up delivery as she sings in these breathy tones is really what makes these hooks so compelling. And the way that she layers hooks back to back on the songs is just exhilarating to listen to. Read My Lips has this propulsive beat and these gorgeous nocturnal synths that remind me of the Junior Boys, an indie synth pop band from the 2000s that I love. Reminds me of them. And these nocturnal synths continue this ongoing feel of the album as this late night odyssey. The layering of the vocals here works beautifully to keep the song engaging, and it has another irresistible groove which doesn't hurt the song at all. I love the subtle addition in the song of these lip squeak kissing sounds at certain points in the song, and they almost sound like
I hate them. I hate them so much. I'm really sorry.
I was thinking the exact same thing, Saoirse. I was thinking the same thing.
So annoying.
To me, like they're obvious. It's obvious what they are, but they also sound like cameras flashing too, as well. I wasn't sure upon repeat listens whether that was intentional, but it's a great detail that I think adds a lot of character to the song in a subtle way, because it's not all throughout the song. It's just in certain parts of it. Mirage Don't Stop is a more exploratory, spacious, and atmospheric track with another brilliant bass line and kick drum beat. There are more electronic elements incorporated here, as well as in the beat production. I will say there are less elements to grab onto here than there are in other tracks, though I think still enough for this to be a very good song, if not a great one. I am in love with the way this sustains a late night dancing mood that's not too excessively energetic nor overly downbeat. This would absolutely kill on a dance floor in any of the last 5 decades, which is an incredible testament to its timeless feel and the mastery of the most basic elements of compelling dance music that makes you move. Dance music is no good if you don't actually want to get up and dance to it. And that's why ultimately this record fails for Jake, is because it doesn't make him want to dance. And any dance record that's going to work needs to make you want to dance. And every single fucking song here makes me want to dance. Even the next track, The Kill, which is more of a ballad, it brings back these cinematic strings of Step Into My Life, though it's less hard-hitting and more moody. It elevates a darker atmosphere on this track as the lights go out in the club and the dancers are left in the absence of propulsive beats to truly confront their feelings for each other and how vulnerable they have let themselves become on the dance floor. Jessie gets this across beautifully in the lyricism too, which is alternately tragic and confronting, not a surrender as much as a compromise. Remember Where You Are is a gigantic anthemic closer, befitting a gigantic and anthemic record. It has some of the biggest vocals of the whole record, those cinematic strings again, great bass lines, gorgeously rich synths. Every element that has made the record so special up until this point is present here on this closer, wrapping a beautiful bow around one of the high points of dance music in the last 20 years. It's the feeling of flooding out of the club into the busy night, dancing in the street, and also embracing whatever comes next. Sex, obviously, but also the joy of getting to do all of this again, which is exactly how
to do sex.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is. It is exactly what it is, and it's being prudish to not admit that. But it's also
that's what the whole of music is really about.
Exactly,
So.
and at least
Not the last album where that will be relevant today.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's not just the joy of flooding out of the nightclub to go and have sex. It's the joy of like knowing that you'll get to do all of this again. Which is exactly how I feel when this album glides to its soft finish and I can hit the play button again and again and again and again. And that is what I have been doing every single day of the last 2 weeks. I love this album. I love it in a special way that I love very few albums of its kind, even though I am a big fan of dance music generally. A lot of it, some of it just doesn't quite always hit me right, where it doesn't quite sustain itself. The thing about like dance music is that in the early days, it was the music of like 7 inches and 12 inches. Like it was the music of singles. It was never really the music of albums. But this is a perfect example of how you can adopt the aesthetics of dance music and flesh them out to sustain the length of a record. And it's a perfect illustration of that, and it's a perfect album.
Perfect
I wonder
album.
what you're gonna give it.
Wow. I completely see your opinion. It's real valid. I get it. I don't agree with all of it, but I get it.
Like, I was watching our good mutual friend Zach's video that he did on Whiplash this morning.
Great video. Go watch that.
And he said in the beginning of that video that his aim with his analyses was not to convince someone of something or make them change their mind if they disagreed. And that's the same approach I have here. I want to convey my perspective in a way that feels compelling and a way that makes sense so that you guys understand why I feel the way that I do. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to do justice to my feelings. I'm not trying to like convince people.
Absolutely.
If anything, I just want to convince people to listen to it.
Yeah. Your criticism always sounds so much more like formed and aesthetic than the rest of ours, if that makes sense. Like, it's so much more structured.
I think that's just the way that I write, yeah.
That's
I just come on here and yell.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's good though, Morgan, because that's your character. That's your character, and it suits you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really. I stopped taking notes on these albums like the second episode in. I don't know. I just felt constricted by them.
Yeah.
See, I have to.
What
I just run the
Christ
risk of
was that
being
noise?
Boring.
Satan's beast was there.
Excuse me.
But no, my favorite mode of discourse is basically dialogue. That's how I like to review records. But,
yeah, and that's
fine.
Very good.
Anyway, August is trying to say something.
Yeah, my favorite mode of discourse is telepathic communication.
Hey,
all
very
right,
good,
Carrie.
very good. Funny.
So,
Jake, what are your 3 favorite tracks and least favorite track? Unless anyone has any closing thoughts.
My 3 favorite
Third one.
tracks are The Last One, The Last One, and The Last One. My
Chinese
least favorite
satellite.
I want to say there's a real tragedy to the way that for Jake this album has gotten worse and worse with each listen, but for me it's gotten better and better. Like there's a real kind of mirroring like tragic element to that, considering how close we normally
siphoned it from me.
Yeah,
Shakespearean in a way.
That's very much like it.
It's like Morgan's right. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Jake, what's your
Magnets.
favorite track?
How do they work?
Yeah, again, the last one 3 times, and
Can't even
Chinese
say
satellite.
the name of it.
Least favorite?
And well, that just is sort of indicative to how I felt about the album. Now, isn't it? And my least favorite is definitely Soul Control, and I give the album a. This will probably be backwards. 4 out of 10.
Oh, that's the right way.
Well, it wasn't
God
backwards.
damn.
It wasn't?
It's also a generous rating for an album that you have done little but lambast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's got plenty of things about it. It's just got just as many things that annoy me.
That's fair.
If not more.
I'm just
Yeah,
glad
I mean, like,
Jake has been true to himself.
I couldn't make my case. I couldn't make myself heard like I wanted to be considered, because I knew I was going to be like the actual, like, or at least I worried that I was going to be the only genuinely negative opinion, which I am. But I had to focus on the things that were most important to that experience, because if I contributed more of my positive thoughts, then I feel like it wouldn't represent what my argument very well at all.
And it might have been
that's
redundant
true.
as well, considering.
Exactly, because I mean, like, everybody else was going to talk about why they loved it. So I mean, what's the point in me saying the couple things that I do like about it?
And like I feel the similarly about my review for the artwork. I feel like that is a much more negative leaning review than a 3 out of 10 even. But
Yeah.
like it's we had also just spent an hour and a half previous to that bringing up how much artistic merit it has and
And that, I
all that.
suppose,
Yeah.
is the value of the giving the ratings, is that it essentializes like our personal.
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah.
I also respect Jessie Ware a hell of a lot more than I respect Matt Healy, so that only stands to reason that I would give it a better score.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
My
August.
3 favorite tracks are, in order, The Kill, Spotlight, and my favorite is Soul Control.
Dope.
Just to piss off Jake. So,
Thank you. I'm glad that you
Well,
enjoy it based
I like
purely
Soul
on my
Control
hatred.
because it's a good song.
no, I do too, but I also like it because Jake doesn't.
What is your least favorite track?
Mm.
I mean, it just doesn't hurt
Uh,
anything, you know?
Probably Step Into My Life is my least favorite.
Fair enough.
And I will give this album a 7.5 out of 10.
I'll take it.
Fair enough.
I'll
Right,
take it.
go.
That's high
right.
for me, so I mean, can't
right.
complain.
So my favorite tracks are the Spotlight, The Kill, and Save a Kiss in descending order. And my least favorite is probably Mirage, parenthetical, Don't Stop. It's just, it doesn't leave much of an impression on me.
Don't stop the beat.
Thank you.
Morgan,
And
your rating.
I'm feeling a light to decent 8 out of 10.
Fair enough. Boy, right. I'm not going to give that number, but that's
So it's just
fine.
like hard
That much-
9.
That much we have established.
No. So my favorite tracks were Remember Where You Are, What's Your Pleasure, and Best Picture winner Spotlight. My least favorite it's probably Mirage. Sorry.
Best
And it's
picture winner
getting-
Spotlight. I can't believe you mentioned that song and invoked that film. It's not a bad movie, but like, come on.
The most
Contemplative.
boring choice.
I mean, it's an Adam McKay like adjacent film. Did he direct that?
The Adam
No.
McKay
Hardly directed
extended
it.
universe.
Yeah, no, it's
Although
it's
it-
in his extended universe.
It was directed by the director of The Cobbler, to be fair.
Oh, that's right.
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, you were saying, Saoirse.
Contemplated
getting-
hurting a friend today.
I hurt a friend today. Sorry, it's getting a 5.5.
And there's another contemplation.
Very good.
Is it?
Okay, so my 3 favorite tracks is a tough decision to make. I will say Spotlight is my favorite, and then Ooh La La, since no one else has really shouted that
Ah
song.
oui oui.
Oh, we damn
and
it.
Soul Control. That
Quick
first
draw.
those first 4 or 5 songs are just fucking unimpeachable to me.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to
That's
give
the
this.
top tier.
Yeah, and I'm going to give this record a light 10.
I like 10.
10.
I find
The
the,
man.
All right,
hole.
that's
I find the
exactly 7.
I find the concept of a light 10 interesting. I don't
No,
think it's like,
I mean, if
you
you
know,
want
nothing
to be
against
technical
you for that
about
or
things, you can only give a light 10. Because if you gave anything stronger than a light 10, that's like a 10.1. So that doesn't make any sense.
Is it? Is it? Is that what that means?
All I'm trying to
Yes!
say is that I mean, it's stupid that we're arguing the semantics of.
Yeah, I mean, it's semantics, but
But like, there are records I've given a 10 out of 10 that are very effusive, like all-time favorites, and there are records that I think are perfect all-time favorites, but just not quite at that level. So we're
Anyway,
grasping at straws here. I think
Give
it's a
it a
perfect
10.
album.
unfield all the others.
I think it's
you gave
like
it a
giving
10.
It's a
something
perfect album.
strong
It deserves
zero.
a 10 out of 10. I'm
And-
not trying to diminish the 10 I'm giving it. First 10 I've given,
And
not
the
first 10,
average
second 10
rating.
I've given to a new release, and I like this more than Punisher.
Yeah, the
Fuck
first
You,
one was
Jake.
Punisher.
And
Right. Well,
Save him.
the average rating was exactly 7 out of 10.
Hey.
It's just yet again we take an offhanded joke I make and then break it down for the next 5 minutes
All right, let's
over why
talk
it was
about.
stupid for me to even bring it up in the
Let's
first
talk
place.
about the new Boris album of Joanna Newsom covers. Yes.
Boris the Spider. No one gets
What
that.
the fuck did you just say to me?
What?
No one gets that reference. No one has heard the Who's second album, I think. There's a song.
No.
There's a song on the
No.
Who's second album called Boris the Spider.
And they say it like Cookie Monster?
Yeah, they do like black metal, like death metal vocals on this '60s song, but just for that one line.
Actually,
True revolutionaries.
Just for that one
actually,
line.
the title, the band's name is actually a reference to the song Boris by the band none other than the Melvins.
It's a
August, were
reference
you conscious
to-
of the fact that you just did the anime glasses up
Yes,
slide?
I was very.
Because you absolutely
That's
just
the
did that.
only
Glasses.
reason I have.
Slide off
That's-
their face. It happens. It's
It would
That's
be
the
great
only
if you
reason
got
I
it
have
wrong.
glasses.
It's
Oh,
a reference to horror legend Boris Karloff.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
I just think of Boris the Spider by The Who every time I think about this band.
Well, that's good for you.
Now I'm
Um,
going to... Holy shit. Well, in terms of Boris, I know they have a shitload of albums that they've been making music technically since 1995.
But it's
which
called
means they've been
No.
on
When
the
I said it was
scene.
called Yes, that was a joke. It's called
It
No.
is called No.
Yeah.
This is their
Or
like
it's called You.
umpteenth studio album. It's fucking ridiculous. They've made a lot of albums, and a lot of them have some decent critical acclaim, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
Didn't they release
I-
like 2 last year?
I'm pretty sure they did.
They did, yeah. And this is their first album as a band this year, but they've also already done a collaborative record this year. And I'm going to
They collaborate with a lot of people, don't they?
I was going to mention that, yeah, they do. I was going to mention this in my review, but I'll just mention it now because this is more relevant here. They've already like posted on Twitter that they're already in the studio recording their next album.
Shit.
Yeah.
Man,
And
they're
it's
on fire.
It's probably going to be called Yes.
The double album.
Or it could be On,
Oh, true.
and it could be the Noon double, the Noon series.
Or it could be
I
like
guarantee you that
Getting
if
real.
the next album is called Yes, then the album cover will be like the top half of this one, just because we just have the big U. And it'll just
Yeah.
keep going and form like an ellipsis.
Yeah, real smooth brain hours over here. Real galaxy brain.
Well, I mean,
So
honestly, nothing is more appropriate for a record as aggressive and just like primal as
Yeah.
this.
All right, who wants
can
to?
we go
introduce
reverse
this
order
record
this time? Since,
officially?
can we
Yeah,
go reverse order this
sure.
time? All right.
All right,
Because
so
I
introduce Boris, Tyler.
yeah,
Go
as I'm
on.
probably the most familiar with Boris as well. So Boris are beloved they're storied giants of drone punk and a unique brand of sludgy doom metal. But they really kind of like flex their muscle across lots of different things, lots of different sort of subgenres of like weird alternative rock music and drone and metal. Just pretty much anything you can think of in that kind of vein, Boris have had a shot at it. They've been around, as Jake has said, for more than 20 years, crafting dense, thick walls of sound and intensity across literally dozens of records. Their most famous stretch of records are their stretch of records in the early 2000s, from Amplifier Worship through to Pink. So that includes albums like Akuma no Uta, Feedbacker, Flood, and Heavy Rocks, as well as obviously Pink itself, Pink being their most well-known and probably most heard album. I also want to shout out the collaborative live album they did with Merzbow, Rock Dream, which is them playing songs from Feedbacker, Pink, and they play the entirety of Feedbacker, but they also play most of the songs on Pink and some of the other songs from the era. That's probably their defining statement as a band. And even though I've said the name Merzbow, don't be freaked out. It's no Pulse Demon. It's much more Boris than it is Merzbow. But it's a great album. Anyway, with No, their first and likely not their last album of the year. They have just tweeted this week, as I said, that they're already in the studio recording the next one. They highlight in a thrilling, punctual dose where their sound is at the beginning of this new decade, and integrating various eras of their work in invigorating and exciting ways. So you have a song like Genesis, the opening track, which is the slow-moving, brooding, sludgy beast of a track, which lingers in dense feedback as it frequently lurches forward. So that's one mode the album is in. And then you have another mode the album is in, such as on the next track, Antigone, which is an aggressive, noisy slice of violent thrash, layering its slicing riff in thick cakes of distortion. The shit just rips. Basically, like, there's only so much like musical catch-all terms you can use to really describe this stuff. It basically just rips. Non-Blood Law continues the thrashy, fast-paced heat of the album, with some more atmospheric vocal passages balancing out the typical shouted sections. The choral vocal layering adds a lot of depth here, as well as an additional intensity to an already blown-out, ridiculously loud song. Temple of Hatred works similarly, with this absolutely nauseating feedback drone that's layered deep in the mix on this track, almost buried beneath a thrashing. And once you key into this nauseating drone, it actually becomes really apparent how utterly unpleasant it is, but it's just buried beneath this thrashing. And just together, these elements elevate the song to an entirely new plane of dense noisiness. Album centerpiece Zerkalo, which I believe title-wise is a reference to the Russian title for Andrei Tarkovsky's film Mirror, is an entirely different beast. Probably the most difficult piece of music here, I would wager. And also, maybe not coincidentally, my favorite track here. There is an absolutely bone-chilling vocal performance from lead vocalist Takeshi here that sounds truly tortured, as though his own vocal cords are frayed, flayed, and raw. The band returned to the doomy sludge of Genesis, but here there's an even greater, more immense feeling of just total hopelessness and oppressive self-destruction. Zerkalo is one of the most purely upsetting pieces of music I've heard that's been released this year so far. The album returns to the kind of more energetic vibe, interspersed and layered with this kind of dronier vibe on the track's perforation line. And Kiki no Way is one of the most outright angry songs here, with a more venomous vocal delivery and bass-heavy riffs that oppress and crush in the mix, even as the song slows down and opens up in its midsection. The song Lust is just pure riff fuckery and layers of noise and distortion. I mean, it's not much novel for me to add at this point. The song just fucking goes. Album standout Loveless is the longest and most expansive track here, a relentless and thrilling piece of extended thrash that devolves into a sludgy breakdown during its 5th minute, with these surprisingly gorgeous, ringing guitar tones that slide and screech over the mix as Takeshi lays down these surprisingly soulful, slower vocals. It's a hell of a way to wrap up the record, honestly. And it caps that climax of the album in a really nice way. And then you have this interlude track, which ends the album in a curious fashion, I think. A very pretty outro, I think. Very lovely and easy to listen to. But who puts an interlude at the very end of their album? If not...
Unless you have another album next.
If not to suggest that perhaps their next project, mark my words, will be a continuation of this project. Who knows?
Bring it on, baby.
Maybe I'll be wrong. I only bring this up because last year they released a double album, Love and Evil, which is a shitty title, but whatever. But it was basically this, except it was the two halves of the album together at the same time. So I'm wondering if they're separating it and doing a similar thing here. But anyway, yeah, I don't have like as extended thoughts as I did in the last album here, but I really like this album quite a lot. I think I haven't listened. I want to be honest and say I haven't listened to a lot of the music Boris has done in the last 10 years. So I haven't listened to some of those albums. But I do think this is a very kind of invigorating, loud, compelling, instantly attention-grabbing, and well-produced and well-performed record. It stands up there with some of their best, I think, even if it's quite different to the sludgier, slower stuff that I'm more used to hearing from them. And yeah, I think that it's a very good album.
Okay, cool. So that's me. I'm just going to notice that.
Neato libido.
All right.
Danny DeVito.
Where's my note for the next one? Excuse me. There we go. Boris. No. Needless to say, I enjoyed this album quite a bit.
Yeah.
Antigone, whichever way you want to pronounce it. I like that pun.
It's cute.
It's a really high energy octane song that in a way that's representative of the things I like most about this album. Runs the gamut between like thrash metal and hardcore punk really well. The two genres sort of historically kind of influenced each other a bit. This rides that line well, and I like that it's honoring music history in that way, even if they didn't mean to. I had no idea if they did. But yeah, I like it. It's got a really intense. The main chorus is really wonderful, and I have stars on the next two songs as well. No Blood Gone, more punk vibes, and Temple of Hatred is sort of this, grungy distortion. It goes really quick. It's a song that feels like it's all of 30 seconds long, but it's not. But it just goes and goes and goes. And those are the moments I like most about the record. What I like less about the record is some things that Tyler liked most is those more abrasive, slow, oozy songs. I get the appeal, but frankly, it just made me want to slap.
Oh man, you would hate Feedbacker. Oh man.
Feedbacker, yeah, I want to say, I've already said this to Jake, but Feedbacker has my favorite guitar solo of all time.
It's pretty
the guitars are amazing cool on this record. The shredding is insane. And even in the songs I don't like so much. They're doing intellectually interesting things with their guitars. But my only note for Sir Carlo is I feel sleepy. And it's just I want, like, the drums are literally like,
doom metal is not your genre, hun.
Oh, I've listened to some doom metal things I like, but not this.
This is very much echoing Jake talking about the dance music on the last album.
No, I've listened to some doom metal I like. It's just I want my brain to not feel like I just want to sleep.
Indicative of the genre. Like, if you think this album is a bit slow and sludgy...
Oh, I don't think this album... It's not that it's slow or sludgy. I just feel uninterested, if that makes sense. There's nothing that's just sort of making my brain want to keep listening to it. And that's just sort of how I feel. I feel like someone else was to do these sounds in a different, like, you know, like I said, I've listened to some doom metal that I really like. But there's something about this that just, it's not hitting those buttons in my head. This is how I feel like I review a lot of albums. And I said this in episode 1. So a lot of the time when I talk about music, it's just like, this just either works for me or doesn't. And I can't really say much more than that. That's sort of how I feel about this. But yeah, I liked 0.6 HXC perforation line, which is quite a title. Yeah, I like it more. It's got an interesting groove to it. It's got an interesting flow. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I enjoyed Lust I enjoyed Fundamental Error, which just fucking shreds. Lovelessness. The back half of it I like it more than I liked Zicalo. So that's, if anything, what I would say is like, it's the similar half of the record. And I like it more than the other versions of that sound on the record. I still don't love it, but I like it more. And the first half is wonderful. It's got this sort of epic metal thrash thing. There is some amazingly complex riffs, and I can't. Maybe not a chord progression, but power chord progression would be a good way to say it. Interesting notes in a power chord format next to each other. They're just very stimulating and almost thought-provoking in a way that makes me just think about music and structure and the way notes fit together as a musician. It just makes me think of things I can do with a guitar that I haven't been doing, which is always nice. And Interlude is just a lovely, beautiful way to shut out the album. It's got a haunting vocal. Dig that shit. And if this isn't a double album, this will be a fine way to finish this one, in my opinion. Overall, had a really good time. Genesis, the opener, I have no real opinions on that song, but it is punishing, crunchy cabinets. If you like metal of this ilk, you will like this song. It goes on a bit in my notes, that song. It's just like, for an opener, I'd like you to get to the on the first listen I was more with it, but on a re-listen where I knew where the album was going, I just wanted it to get to the point a bit quicker. But if I was listening to a whole album that was that sound, I wouldn't mind, if that makes sense. It's just the fact that I know it's getting to something I find really exciting, and I just wanted to get there quicker.
I kind of think it was a strange choice for an opener. I do like the song, though.
Yeah, it's a good song. It's a bit long for a song that's not as good as the rest of the album that is at the front.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But overall, I enjoyed it a whole bunch. Can't wait to check out the rest of their music.
All right. So we have the sweet Jesus Christ. We have the complete surprise that was the last album we covered, and now we have the absolutely not surprising at all album here, because this shit shreds.
Yay!
Morgan likes the thrashy punk influenced doom metal flavored album. What?
You know what? You know what's funny about this though is that before I heard this record, I would never have predicted that Morgan would enjoy really like a Boris album. But then they made this album, and this is like exactly the kind of Boris that you would enjoy, because it's the louder, it's the thrashier, it's the faster paced Boris, not the slower stuff. So this was the perfect album to introduce you to them, really.
Brilliant. Yeah. I found myself pretty much liking everything that this record had to offer. Admittedly, the more challenging parts of it, like Zerkalo, the more drony sort of aspects of it, were the least grabbing for me. But I did appreciate it and saw where it was coming from. It's just surrounded by a lot of ragers, so it's just not going to end up being what I prefer on the album by merit of it not going, I think it sounds great. This is exactly how like sludgy crust punk metal should sound, in my opinion, where it's just like it's like grimy and dirty, but everything's
guitar.
Clear. Yes, and the mix is great. Everything comes through real nice. It just sounds great. And as a guitar nerd, this made me, it made me deeply happy. I don't really have much to say in the way of this record. It just goes, and I like it. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Good.
Cute.
We're good at
All
this.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. So this album's awful. I hated it. Let's move on.
What did I miss?
Well,
Alex?
August
Did I
hates
miss-
the album, apparently.
No, he doesn't.
No, I
I
don't.
don't
It's
believe it for a
awesome.
second.
Yeah, I mean,
Hey!
I knew he'd like it.
Come on. Like,
Were you all,
I'd
be honest,
it's-
were you all trashing on me while I was going to the toilet?
No,
No, I
we,
just-
we only trashed
No.
Tyler.
that's true, did we? What did we say?
We did.
no, we didn't.
I don't remember.
I don't
Didn't
know.
happen.
Okay.
He's gonna be editing this. He's gonna
Yeah.
find
This is the thing. You forget. I own you. Footage-wise.
Okay, well, let's not quite go that far.
Yeah. Well, guess what?
You can only own
That's
me
my
with consent,
kink.
all right?
You can't own me because I don't care.
August says that's my kink.
The thing is, I was making the exact same joke at the same time, but like, I'm 22.
Oh, okay. I see. It's an ageist thing now.
What the hell are we even talking about?
August, why do you like this album?
Not the Boris record. Anyways, Boris, clearly a band who
The
likes the
self-titled,
Melvins.
the self-titled debut from the UK Prime Minister.
Yeah.
He got off the ventilator and just sounded like an Asian man.
Gosh, yeah. This Genesis establishes this.
Could you
Really
imagine him being
thick.
racist against himself like that?
Oh.
August, please continue.
Ventilator, not ventilator. Damn it! You've messed me up.
Boris
Nothing.
Johnson.
Ventilator Blues by the Rolling Stones. No, Genesis establishes a very thick, heavy atmosphere that just builds and builds upon itself to like a fever pitch, which I think is a perfect way to describe a lot of this record. It's just building to this extreme fever pitch point. I just love how oppressive the guitars sound on this album. Antigone just features this manic vocal performance that is complemented by equally manic guitar lines across this album. No blood song, not album. No Blood Lore. Once again, with this kind of fever pitch idea, it's just this squealing instrumental. Just feels. This whole record just feels massive.
The reason I wanted to do my review first is because I knew this would turn into a competition for like the best adjectives to describe like the sound of this album.
Yeah.
But your squealing is very
Dick's the
good too.
best adjective.
I hadn't thought of squealing, but that's a good one.
Mm. But yeah, Temple of Hatred is a nice, short punch to the dick of a song. Really enjoyed that. That's fun. to have
News
context.
flash.
Funny in context, too.
August
Yeah.
enjoys being punched in the dick.
Yeah,
I
dude.
mean, masochist. We've established this.
Yeah. Anyways, Zerkalo presents this slower, sludgier instrumental, and I think it speaks to the great quality of Boris as a band and this album, of just the diversity, like the Jessie Ware album, of their influences, like thrash, punk, sludge. Very nice, very nice. And yeah, it's no surprise that this is a very Melvins feeling album, as it is pretty much their chief influence. Kikinue is probably my favorite of the shorter songs, as it is just this consistently fun banger. The shouting of the title of the song at the end of it, Kikinue, is just infectiously fun. Yeah, it's just non-stop fun. Lust and Fundamental Error are a great pair of like back-to-back songs that just kick your ass and are heavy as hell. The progression across the Loveless is incredibly satisfying.
Bold of them, like on their penultimate track, really bold of them to cover a full album by My Bloody Valentine, like just in the one
Yeah,
song.
really.
I knew that joke was coming from you, Tyler. I knew it was gonna get here eventually.
Really, I thought they were doing an instrumental version of the Russian drama.
I hate both of you so much right now.
Anyways,
Only on
we've already
this
kind of
podcast.
addressed the point of this album ending on an interlude and how that is potentially a sign that this is a part of a larger double album.
If it turns
Yeah,
out that
it's
it's
just-
not a part of a larger double album, I will downgrade my score of this record. I won't.
Just to be that petty about being wrong.
Anyways, yeah. I mean, it's great. Like, what do you say?
That's what I
I
said.
say it's
all.
great. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said too. Isn't
Mm.
it?
You said it
What'd you
better than
say?
me.
Oh, that
So
you
we-
only meant well. Of course
Stop
you
it!
did.
Stop it! No! Don't
What was
do
that?
it! Don't
So
say it!
what did you
Don't
think
say it.
of No by
Jake.
Boris?
Well, I'm glad that we have all leapt back onto the fun train after Jessie Ware, because I
Tactless.
Yep.
What does the
Tactless
fun
hot
train
shot.
look like, Jake?
I mean,
What
that
does the
wasn't a
fun train
shot.
look like to you?
That wasn't a shot at you all or the album. It was just that I'm glad we all agree. You fucking ninny.
We're not
Anyway.
enemies. Jake, we're not enemies. We just disagree.
I know, but I'm just saying I appreciate camaraderie here.
Yes! Yes!
I don't even know what's happening. You all are talking
Yes!
too fast.
Yes!
Review the fucking record.
I would, but you all won't stop fucking talking.
I mean, he really is trying.
Yeah, okay,
He's not the
So
one to
don't
be yelling at
encourage
right
me.
now.
You fucking shithead. All I was saying is that it was nice to agree on something, you assholes. Yeah, I love this album. This album fucking rules. I really like it because I'll take up the residence as the podcast's doom metal snorter because I fucking inhale the genre en masse all the time. And the thing I really like about this album is its unconventional structure and how it uses all of Boris's sort of different sounds that it has adopted on different albums like Pink and Feedbacker to segue into one another. I love how it starts off with the enormous sounding just titan that is Genesis, and it really builds you up. And instead, like on a normal doom metal album, this would sort of build you up, and then the end of this song would be the crescendo. But instead it goes into Anti-God, which is just this fucking furious, absolutely pummeling song, and this continues for a while, and it sounds like the band is actively trying to catch fire by playing their instruments so fucking intensely and going so hard, and eventually they just I think August put it best when he said that it's like, or at least I think it was August who mentioned it being a fever pitch of just eventually you sort of get there and they just fucking go. It actually reminded me at moments where you sort of get to these the top moments. At least it made me think about what Tyler said about Bedlam and Goliath on our Mars Volta episode, where they are actively trying to go supernova and explode. And this album does that so well. And it also does this, but it knows how to relent and kick it back, because once you have sort of enough of, like, you'll have like a 3-song stretch of the really aggressive punk, like hardcore cuts, and it'll stop and give you a more sludgy, doomy song to sort of like settle away from, and just sort of like it's got a beautiful ebb and flow to it that I really, 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 really like and appreciate, because not many bands can combine this approach to genre as cohesively as I feel like Boris do. And the way it just sort of kind of uses it's a slow start, has a slow very middle, and has the quiet, sort of somber, really eerie ending of the like vocal passages of the singers like whispering like "you can touch," and you're just like, what the fucking hell? And it's just such an addictive experience. For all of its slow moments, it makes the slower parts make the faster and more aggressive cuts feel so much more rewarding. And that is what I love so much about music like doom metal, or music like even like post-rock, like Swans, and how it builds tension and then releases it. Except this album does it in over the course of a 40-minute long span, and it does it in a way that feels substantive and structured, but also gives it to you a little bit faster than you would get from other cuts and other bands and other forms of this kind of music, in a way that I've never really heard blended, at least blended this well and this consistently awesomely. And I love the vocal performances on pretty much every fucking song, just because the lead singer is just fucking screaming his brains out, as he tends to do on every single album I've heard thus far. And this is an album that makes me want to grab a fucking microphone and just wail along with the band. And I really, really do love it.
Lead singer Tekashi 6ix9ine.
Yep, that's the one.
Lead singer Takashi Miike.
Yep, him too. The Takeshis is the band name.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd like to see them collaborate.
But also,
that'll be
shout out to Rata. I'm not sure how exactly it's pronounced, but the band's
Shout out to my girl, Miss Sylvia Roan. She's got. I'm just gonna stop.
Thank you. I'm very glad you elected the end of the band.
Shall we?
Mercifully.
Anyway,
No
Wata,
more chance.
shout out to Wata, who is the band's chief guitarist, and who is a woman.
Impeccable work.
Who is one of, we talked, I think, last week about how there were very few, we could think of very few women of note in the metal world. And so it's cool to shout out one. Incidentally, the same one who is responsible for my favorite guitar solo of all time in Feedbacker. So she does excellent work here as well.
Rips.
So
Great shit.
All right. So I think that's the album.
Yeah, it's a really easy album to describe the appeal of. If it sounds like something you like, it'll be something you like.
Is this the first time we have more or less uniformly agreed on an album?
Let me just go back to our ratings.
I think social was
we all gave
more
positive scores to Tallahassee.
That's true.
That's true.
More new releases, though.
Yeah, well, I'm just going back and reading what I see. We all liked August's album.
Oh, yeah.
Run the Jewels, RTJ4. We all
You know
gave
what
7
we
plus.
should add?
Yeah.
You know what we should add to the spreadsheet as a standard deviation?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I have the standard deviation for some of our reviews before, because I wanted to calculate what our most chaotic reviews were. But
Yeah, you'll have to run the numbers.
yeah, absolutely, I can do that. Anyway, yeah, let's rate the Boris record.
I don't know. I still think my Strokes reference is the worst thing because that made Tyler get up and leave.
That was awful. You know what the worst thing about it was? Is that it took me like 10 seconds to place the reference.
See, that's why it confused me, is because you did it in such a detached way. I was like, wait, what did I say? Why is he leaving?
No. I had to walk away because I already knew it was a really random, dumb reference, but I couldn't think of it, so I had to walk away and think, and then I realized, and it made it even worse. Fuck you, August.
I'm happy with it.
Let's do the roundup.
Yeah, round up.
Yes.
This album.
Jake, 3 favorite tracks, least favorite track.
My
go.
3 favorite tracks are, I'll be a contrarian, and I'll say Genesis, and the 1-2 punch of Genesis and Antigone. Those will be 2 of my songs, and I'll say Fundamental Error also, even though it's very hard for me to pick cuts between this, and I would give this a fairly emphatic 9 out of 10.
Do you have a least favorite?
Right.
My least favorite, I guess if I had to pick one,
It'll be Vitriol by Liturgy.
Yep, that's the one. No, I maybe Loveless, maybe, but
Yes.
it's really on the merit of it just being like the song I enjoy the least and not the song that is the worst, you know?
All right, August,
right.
go.
I guess that's me. So yeah,
Yes.
favorites would have to be Genesis, uh, Zerkalo, and Kinue. And my least
Good job.
favorite would probably be Thank You. Not Thank You. That's not a song on this album. HXC.
Thank You, the worst track on Fishman's live album, 98, 12, 28.
Anyways, I'm
That
giving
has an
this album.
audience with the people in this chat, and that's it.
I don't even think that that's accurate, honestly. I think that was just for Tyler.
Did you just fucking make up words?
Yeah, I'm gonna give this album.
But he said like my least favorite track is pause, Thank You, and so I just brought out an album that coincidentally I love. Where my least favorite track is called Thank You. So
Yeah.
Let August give his score. Let August give his score.
No.
I don't want to let August. I'm just kidding.
Okay, fine. I won't give a score. I abstain.
This
Please give
episode's
a
gonna
score,
break.
honey.
8 out of 10. 8 out of 10.
Good. Fucking thank you, Morgan. Go.
Thank you,
broke
Okay, my
fork.
top 3 tracks are Fundamental
I
Error,
just broke my
Lust.
fork.
Right.
We finished.
Let's go.
Just broke-
Top 3 tracks are
Just broke my
Fundamental
fork.
Error, Lust. Shut up about your fucking fork. No one cares. Fundamental Error, Lust,
Fucking
Temple
hell.
of Hatred. And my least favorite track is probably the interlude, just because the album is so consistent and the interlude gives me the least amount to work with. And I'm feeling, yet again, a light to decent 8.
Solid shit, bro. Right. That's me.
I would
Hello.
prefer not.
I prefer them liquid.
Exactly.
Damn it.
Hey, y'all been doing it all episode.
It's only fair.
No, I commend it, Morgan. I'm
Thank
all
you.
for you. Yeah.
I really
Gonna-
like Fundamental
guys,
Error.
Guys,
And
don't
also,
worry. I can assure you, I have a new fork.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up about your fork!
fucking hell, Tyler. Right. I really enjoyed Fundamental Error. I really enjoyed Antigone and Temple of Hatred. And I think I would say that my least favorite track was Zerkalo. And I'm going to give this a 7.5.
Hey.
Yay.
Anybody
Um,
know?
My favorite track is Zerkalo. Followed closely by Loveless and Non-Blood Law. And I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10.
Solid
Sexy.
shit, bro.
Sexy.
So that's 8.1 overall.
Hey.
As it stands, Tyler and Jake are still the most positive ratings. Morgan has
Shock
fallen.
horror.
I am pretty much tied with Morgan. I'm like less than 0.1 ahead of him. And then
That's about right.
August is trailing behind.
Again, what
Now,
a
you
shock.
guys are about to talk about an album I haven't heard. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
going to mute myself and do
Oh,
something else.
right.
Yeah, well, let's get
Well,
through this.
Talking
Actually,
about-
have to-
This won't be a very long segment.
No.
I have lots of notes, but I'll try and keep it brief.
Yeah, it's good that we keep this brief because I have to go a little early tonight, and
Okay.
this is also leads me to introducing the idea of me going first on Full Circle Nightmare,
Yeah.
No. Fair enough.
because my thoughts on that are very short as well.
Okay, we'll
Go
race
ahead.
through this then. If you guys don't mind, I might go first for 100
Go ahead.
Gecs, just because I have lots of notes.
Just
and-
run with it.
Okay, so 100
That's
Gecs,
very short.
100 Gecs new remix album is 1,000 Gecs in the Tree of Clues. So I wanted to bring up a point where remix albums are weird. You kind of can't really approach them in the same way that you approach a studio album, I don't think. Just because the purpose and structure of a remix album is not the same, and it would be unfair, I think, to make a direct comparison in that vein to the original record or really to any other record here. That said, I do think that much like the original 1,000 Gecs album, this is a mixed bag for me. Leaning positive, I like most of more stuff here than I dislike. A lot of the remixes here are, I mean, look, texturally, musically, like if you weren't a fan of 1,000 Gecs, there's nothing here that's going to win you over. Like this is something that is just a lot of producers who are similar to Dylan Brady of 100 Gecs and are cut from the same cloth are trying to take a kind of similarly excessive, cartoonish sense of humor to those tracks and kind of building them up and kind of riffing on them in fun and interesting ways with varied results. A lot of the thrill here is less in like the songs themselves than in who was going to show up on the songs themselves and what are they going to do with the songs themselves. So it opens with a remix of Money Machine, which is basically 100 Gecs' signature song at this point, remixed by A.G. Cook, who is the chief architect of the PC music group and who produced Charlie XCX's Pop 2 and Charlie's self-titled album, as well as most of How I'm Feeling Now. A very prolific and influential producer. He offers a dense and layered remix of the band's signature track that I think sounds quite good. It adds a lot of his trademark atmosphere while still capturing the song's aggressive noise in the final breakdown. It's not up with his best work, but it's fine. The ringtone remix with Charlie XCX, Rico Nasty, and Kira Kira Benito. So Charlie is, of course, a great fit for this particular song, ringtone, which is, I think, a highlight on the original album. Because although in all honesty, I will say I prefer the minimalism of that original version on the album because it contrasts the static sonic intensity and insanity of the other songs. It's a moment of calm on that album. So here it's kind of sort of fleshed out into a posse cut. I can see why Sarah from Kira Kira Benito was put here. And I guess I see how they try to integrate her kind of quirky aesthetic, but I think it kind of feels a bit forced, to be honest. She doesn't really fit on this song. Rico Nasty is a bit of a better fit, I think, for this track, especially for that distorted guitar bridge that she's on. Though again, I don't feel this adds much that's interesting to the original. So, and the other remix of Ringtone by Umru, who is another prolific and acclaimed producer in the same kind of musical genre, quickens the pace of the original and plays with the sound and vibe. I don't think it adds up to much. So overall, what I'll do, I'll discuss all the remixes really quickly and I'll say whether I think they're like better than the originals or like they add something interesting to the original that makes them worth it. And generally, I think that the original Money Machine is better than the remix here, and the original Ringtone is better than both of the Ringtone remixes here. I do want to shout out, particularly interestingly, both remixes of the song 745 Sticky, which is the original opening track on the album. One remix features Injury Reserve, specifically Richie with a T and Parker Corey, their producer. This remix is weird. Like it's difficult to get a handle on initially. Richie's a good fit in terms of his rapping, and Parker's remixing makes the song sound very much akin to songs on the Injury Reserve self-titled album, I think, like Jailbreak the Tesla and that kind of thing. But there are times in this track where it feels a little bit overly busy in a way that doesn't fully connect, or where the pace of the song feels kind of halted for me. But to its credit, this remix does completely transform the tone of the original song, and I enjoy the sound of the outro very much. The other remix of the song is by Black Dresses, which I think is a more successful remix generally in terms of like how well the aesthetic of the remixer is adopted and transforms the song. The transformation is less radical here, but their presence adds to it fantastically. If you enjoy Black Dresses, you'll likely enjoy this remix. If you don't, there's no way in hell you'll enjoy this remix. It's very much Black Dresses on level 10. Doing their noisy distortion with screaming thing. I think it's a better fit for their sound than their earlier remix of the song 800 dB Cloud, which they released shortly before they broke up. That was an interesting remix as well, but I think this remix is a bit better. Where I think the album is more successful, there are two particular songs, which I think are the two best songs on the original album. Hand Crushed by a Mallet and I Would Never Stop You, or XXX I Would Never Stop You. Actually, let me correct myself. The original version of I Would Never Stop You is one of my least favorite songs in that album. I was mixing it up with something else. But I think that the remixes of I Would Never Stop You here are quite good. Particularly the remix of I Would Never Stop You by that features Tommy Cash and Hannah Diamond. So Tommy Cash is a rapper, right? I don't like him. He butchered his features on Pop 2 and the Charlie album. He does the same thing here. So let's ignore Tommy Cash for a second. Hannah Diamond is such a fucking great fit for this song. It's almost like it's made for her, even if it's noisier and busier than the typically polished and shiny kinds of PC music stuff that she's used to doing. I love the way that this remix feels like a proper dance mix here, that it could conceivably conceivably, pop off in a 90s club. It's a real throwback to the kind of remixes that I listened to as a kid, and I really appreciate that. I love the way the track slows down towards the end to this kind of trance-like, slow-paced outro/breakdown. It's really beautiful and ends in a fade-out, which actually surprisingly manages to work really, really well. I think this is a perfect example of how you can take an original song that doesn't feel very well developed or is just quite kind of unpleasant, and you can turn it into something genuinely interesting, I think. So I Would Never Stop You remix with Hannah Diamond, full marks. My favorite song on the original album is Hand Crushed by a Mallet, and that is there. We have two remixes here of that song that are, let's just say, varying in quality. The most notable one is the remix that features Patrick Stump of Fall Out Boy. I think his appearance obviously transforms the song radically, but I actually think that he's a surprisingly good fit for the song. It turns the song into something a little bit more smoother and low-key production-wise, even though it has a fast pace to it. And then you get this raucous guitar breakdown and these looped screams in the outro of the song. So it has a nice progression from soft and quiet to absolutely balls to the wall insane at the end. And I think that the progression from one end to the other of the spectrum here is much more well structured and formed here than it is on other songs, which just cut. Like other songs on this album cut like really quickly from quiet to loud to noisy to clean to abrasive, whereas this has a kind of slow progression that is more tasteful and fully formed, I think. So that's probably my favorite track on the album. But then my least favorite track is the other remix of the same song, the Hand Crushed by Mallet remix by some artist called No Thank You, which is almost unlistenable. Like it's
almost.
It's blown out to all hell, and not in a way I find it enjoyable. So you can make this kind of like overwhelming static noise. You can make it interesting if the textures are interesting in some way. But this sounds really cheap. Like it sounds phoned in and cheap, and it's just awful. What else do I want to shout out? I want to shout out so the remix of 800 dB Cloud by Rico Harvey doesn't do much for me. I didn't like that song on the original album. I don't particularly like it here. The remix of Stupid Horse with Girlfriend of the Year. She's used to be a PC music mainstay, now a radical independent artist who makes conceptual musical artwork, which let's just say varies in quality for me. A lot of people find her music unlistenable, but I think that she's a great fit for the vocals here. She plays with the original lyrics, kind of changing the stupid horse to a stupid sheep and all kinds of things, and she just adds a little bit of extra character to the song. She really makes it her own, which I like. And I want to shout out, if you haven't heard of her, that's completely understandable, but Girlfriend of the Year has this song called Friday Night. Anyone who's listening who's heard the song will know what I mean, but you should go and listen to that song because it's quite an experience lyrically. I can guarantee it will take you by surprise. Anyway, just continuing my quick pace here, a couple other things I want to shout out. So the remix of the song Gec with Lil West and Tony Velour, that's successful because it actually turns the original into a song. On the album, it wasn't really a song, it was just a collection of noises and ideas that weren't really constructed into anything. But at least here it's a song, even if I don't really care for either of the rap features, to be honest. They kind of just are there. The remix of Gec to You with Dory and Electra. I love Dory and Electra so much. Their album Flamboyant from last year was easily one of the best pop records of that year. That said, Dorian does not fit well on this remix at all. And a lot of the bars and asides that they add to the song are just kind of eye-rolling. And especially the vocal deliveries that Dorian plays with on this remix are just kind of painful. And the way that those kind of like Gec sounds are like added into the song to like as a joke. I don't know. I'm not a fan. It's really irritating. Yeah, and then there's two originals on here as well, Came to My Show and Toothless. Came to My Show is fine. I think it's decent. I like the arpeggiated piano loops on this song. They sound like they're directly taken from a Dan Deacon song because he does that kind of arpeggiated piano thing a lot. But Laura's vocals sound pretty good here in terms of what she goes for aesthetically. Like not conventionally good, but like in terms of what the band are normally going for vocally, Laura's pretty fine here. I like the song Toothless quite a bit ever since I heard this track in the 2019 Minecraft Gala concert that they performed online. I hoped they would develop it into a studio track, and here it is. It still sounds a bit unfinished, like the live version did. I don't really mind so much because it sounds great. It has really good melodies, the vocals are quite good, and the breakdown at the end of the song is really strong. I think I might prefer the live version a little bit more, but, it's whatever. Overall, in terms of a remix album, one problem that remix albums often have is that they tend to be quite bloated, and this record is no exception. It has a lot of remixes on it. It could have benefited from some serious chopping down. But at the same time, I think the point of this is, because a lot of the remixes are so short, the point of it is to allow as many different voices and friends of the 100 Gecs musical community to kind of come in and join them and express their own takes on the songs. So I think it succeeds in that way. But I don't particularly care for it any more or any less than the original album. I maybe like the original album just a little bit more just because it is shorter, even though my problem with that album was that it felt too short and too unfinished. Ultimately, at least, it's a little more consistent than this is. But still, I think it's a pretty good remix album. And fans of 100 Gecs will undoubtedly get a lot out of it. People who are not fans of 100 Gecs will undoubtedly not get very much out of it at all. I'm kind of nicely in the middle, leaning towards positive, I think. But overall, it's fine, yeah. Anyone have anything to add?
I don't like it. I listened to this once because it was all I could bear. I would have liked to do it multiple times, but it was a bit more of a last-minute addition, and I was slacking, and I will admit that.
That's fair.
But as someone who felt pretty much exactly as you did on the first 100 Gecs album, which is this is this is cool for an EP, but where are the songs? Money Machine is great for all a minute and 30 seconds that it lasts. I was just okay, I'll go into this, and honestly, Morgan said something on a previous episode, the Black Dresses one. He said, "There is not any point where I know what is happening or why I should like this." And that is me listening to this album. I feel so old. It is too much. All of the remixes add in 40 more different ideas to every song, which was already a rough collage of ideas, and it is an assault on my senses that I cannot get behind. And by the end of the album, I was at my fucking limit. It was a supreme and profound test of my patience. And that is all I have to say about it.
I think it benefits a lot more from being more familiar with the sound and also more familiar with all the artists that are featured here as well.
I'm sure.
It's totally not your thing, and I get that. I really do get that. It's very much a for the fans thing. But I wanted to shout it out because I know I have some followers who really like them. And I want to say
this is for you if you like the original album. I am the outlier here.
Yeah. I want to say, it's... the thing about remix albums is you can't criticize them for pacing in the same way you can criticize a studio album, or for structuring, because these are different artists on every single song. It's basically a compilation. So you can't expect there to be cohesion. The whole point of it is that it's not going to be cohesive. But
it still doesn't mean I am any less tired when it's over.
Definitely.
I think this podcast has made me realize I'm a boomer.
Took this podcast, did it?
Uncalled for. It's unnecessary. Okay. There's no reason for this.
I wonder where we got that from. Misfits t-shirt. All right, August.
I hate you so much. I quit.
Okay, so
it's just a joke. It's banter. Misfits are a good band.
No, I am not engaging. Not engaging with this rhetoric.
That's fair.
Anti-Morgan rhetoric.
Do you have any more thoughts, Morgan?
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay. I've had a passing familiarity with 100 Gecs. I've technically heard all of 1,000 Gecs in full, just like in like a party context of like someone was just playing it and I happened to like overhear it, think, oh yeah, that's nice. It's appropriate for the setting. Didn't really feel compelled to listen to it outside of that setting, because I think that very much is the setting where 100 Gecs is appropriate, like just as this loud, weird background noise. What?
When you aren't focusing on it.
I want to jump in as well to maybe correct some assumptions. Like, for those of you who aren't as familiar with like PC music and Deconstructed Club and Bubblegum Bass, this is not what most of it sounds like. This is this is an example of an extreme variation.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree there. And when I listen to like a remix album or a remix EP, whatever you have, I try to think of two things as general points of like guiding criticism as to whether I like it or not. Those points being that, do I feel that the remixes have significant and interesting changes on the originals? And do I feel like the various producers on the remix EP album are distinct enough to warrant their placement there and not feel homogenous? And I feel this album fulfills like one of those criteria some of the time. Like there are definitely some very significant and interesting alterations to some of these songs which I've heard in passing, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely an interesting change to this song, most of which Tyler's elaborated on. But I just find that a lot of the producers on here kind of blend together. A lot of the features feel very homogeneous. It kind of just sounds like, and I listened to it twice, and it just kind of sounds like 50 minutes of white noise or like rushing water.
Yeah.
Because I don't really feel like the length is justified. I mean, that's the same with a lot of remix albums, to be fair, so it's not like a specific pot shot against this record, but too long just doesn't feel really. Not a whole lot of the songs feel like they're their own thing. You could easily tell me this was like a 50-minute like experimental song, like just one big block that was meant to flow into itself. And I would honestly believe you. Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
I want to say, like, I do disagree about the features not standing out. Like, for me, I think they're probably the most, like, standout thing. Because you can tell when Charlie XCX is on. You can tell You can tell when Richie with the T's on. You can tell when Patrick Stump's on. You can tell when Girlfriend of the Year and Hannah Diamond and Black Dresses are on. And they're all distinct in their own way. And Dory and Electra, too. They're all distinct in their own way. And I think their presence helps the album a lot, actually, in terms of, like, adding the character that it needs. But I guess, like I said, if you're not familiar with a lot of the artists and producers here, it does kind of like blend together because they're all working with the same kind of source material.
Yeah, so, that is a bit of my thing, why I feel it blends together so much, in that I tend to have a passing familiarity with a lot of these artists, and it just doesn't particularly stand out to me.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. Okay. Is anything else anyone wants to add?
No, not particularly.
The only thing I would say is that, like, the remix album, this is how, like, as someone who did enjoy the first album, albeit not nearly as much as most people did, I feel like this is how that album sounds to people who hate 100 Gecs. Like, listening to this is just like, hell.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. This is a for the fans thing. Like, it's not. We can't really review it in the same sense as we could review a studio album, because it's not how it's intended. It's something.
Absolutely.
It's something that's out there for fans, and ultimately, as someone who considers themselves a moderate fan, I'm grateful for it. I think there are some, like I said, some standout remixes, but ultimately, it's a little too inconsistent for me to fully get on board completely. Even though I probably like it more.
Can I just say something? Can I just say something? As someone who hasn't heard put it, right?
Please.
So I listened to 1,000 Gecs, the album, today, and I really, really liked it quite a lot. I didn't expect it, but I did. When we were talking about black dresses, and people were like, "This is like 100 Gecs." I thought that was a meme. No, it's an accurate description of that record, but that's fine. But that's like a 20-something minute long album with 10 tracks on it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that would be like for 50 minutes.
Well,
And
again,
it's
to
just
be fair,
more overwhelming too. That's my
Again,
main problem with it.
to be fair, like it's not all remixes as well. There are original songs here and live performances
there
which I
are,
never
yeah.
even touched on. I don't think they need to be here. But I mean, I'm happy
No,
they
they were kind of
exist.
weird.
I don't think they're.
I just
offensively
wish
bad.
those songs existed in like a singles context rather than in the
Totally.
context of this.
But like they're here now, and we're glad fans will be glad to have them.
Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah,
And
context
I'm
they
really
come
glad
from.
we covered it. Absolutely. I'm really glad we covered this.
Yeah. So good album overall, just a bit inconsistent for me.
All right.
So,
let's go to ratings then.
Okay.
yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Glad I
Jake.
didn't. Glad I didn't listen to
I'll-
this just because nobody wants to hear me shit all over it.
Yeah. This is not going to be your bag. I'd give the album I guess a tentative 4 out of 10.
August.
I'm in the same boat of like I can't even really pick out tracks I particularly like or dislike. I guess if anything, I did kind of like the live track. I thought that was a cute little gimmick to have on there. Still, I wish it was in its own context, and I would have to uphold Jake's score of a 4 out of 10 myself.
Cool. Well, I think my take definitely benefits from having more familiarity with all the artists involved and having heard this at least 4 times. I think I've listened to this now, so I do know the songs and remixes are distinct in my head. I will give this a 7 out of 10. I guess we're not doing favorite tracks. I suppose that's fair.
It's a bit late now,
can.
isn't it?
The Caro Bonito feature. That's my favorite track.
I love how
and
that's like
that's
one of the
5 out
things
of
I
10.
complained about. So very fair.
How about you, Morgan? What will you rate this album?
A 0 out of 10 worst pile of poopy I ever did here.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
also like to thank you all for giving me
Alright.
an opportunity to catch up my reading of Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith.
Fantastic. Okay, well, Jake. Jake.
Okay, the record of the week here that I've selected is Kyle Craft's Full Circle Nightmare, and the reason I did this is because I find it to be a criminally under-discussed record. If you don't know the conception of this album, this was actually kickstarted by Kyle. He has one album or project that I believe came out before this that I think was just self-produced that I admittedly have not listened to, but he wanted to make a more like full and complete project, so he took the Kickstarter and he got it funded and he made it. And as a result, Full Circle Nightmare is sort of a throwback album. It's a big kind of glam rock / traditional, more like southern rock and roll kind of. There's a lot of influences that I think that are on this record sleeve, everywhere from Bob Dylan to David Bowie in specific eras of their respective careers. And it is sort of that, but I think he blends it with sort of modern sensibilities, sense of song structures, lyricisms, and all that. And I think it is a terrific release, an album that owes a lot to its genres, but does them all justice. And I love it for reasons that I'll go more into when I get to talk about it, because I know that Morgan wanted to talk about this first because he is stretched for time. So I won't be super in-depth on it, and I will wait until my turn. That being said, now that I sort of have the background on the record, Morgan, what did you think of Full Circle Nightmare by Kyle Craft, even though I think I kind of already know?
This is an album that Jake has been talking about for a while now, and it was like one of the Jake core albums that I just still haven't really heard yet. So I'm glad I finally got the chance to sit down and listen to it. And my thoughts overall are positive on it, but they're not exceptionally so. I think it really is hindered by the fact that it's such a throwback. You know, it just feels too indebted to like the late 70s, early 80s piano rock albums by it's like Billy Joel and Elton John, David Bowie, etc. It doesn't do enough for me to separate, like, it doesn't do enough to break away from the feeling of why wouldn't I just listen to Billy Joel, you know? And it's just
That
Wait,
100
that's
Gecs
finished?
remix is coming through in the background.
They're trying to break in. They heard I gave it a 4. They're coming for me.
They heard we gave it our lowest average.
All
on the
100
main pod.
Gecs.
Oh shit, we did too.
We-
That doesn't really
yeah.
count though, because only 3 people reviewed it. Anyway, continue, Morgan.
But yeah, there are definite spots on the record I enjoyed. After all, I feel like there's only so much uninteresting that a late 70s, early 80s piano rock throwback album could be. You know, that's just a genre that I enjoy. And, you know, I think songs in particular like let me pull it up here.
That classic.
You're all so funny. Slick and Delta Queen and The Rager and Heartbreak Junkie are all songs I very much enjoyed, especially lyrically. I think the Kraft isn't exactly playing with any new ideas whatsoever, but I think he plays with them in a way that I find compelling in terms of lyrics. Yeah, instrumentally the album is kind of gets a little monotonous for me just because every song kind of ends up sounding very similar. But you know, well, maybe I'm just remembering it. Well, you know what? I don't care.
You
Stand by your opinion,
you are
Morgan.
successfully remembering the album.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Which
look,
is an achievement.
well, it's
Damn.
got. You know what, Tyler? Just shut up.
Sorry. I didn't mean like an achievement for you. I just meant like a testament to that the album is not necessarily the most memorable thing we've discussed today.
Yeah, I think we got that.
I thought Morgan might have been thinking I was insulting him, which I wasn't doing.
No, I thought you were, so I'm glad we cleared that up. But anyway, yeah, there's stretches of this album that I don't find particularly memorable at all, and it's just kind of middling for a fair portion of it. But overall, my thoughts do lean more positive than negative. And yeah, since I have to go ahead and hop on out of here after this, I'll go ahead and do a roundup, which, you know, favorite tracks are the ones I mentioned, Slick and Delta Queen, The Rager, and Heartbreak Junkie. Like those quite a bit. And least favorite is probably, I have Belmont, parentheses, One Trick Pony written down, but for the life of me, I can't remember what that sounds like. So, yeah. And overall, I'm feeling a light 6 out of 10. And I look forward to hearing what the rest of you all have to say more smartly and better than I do, no matter where you come down on.
Oh, Morgan. We
Well,
love
put
hearing
a
you
step
talk
far
about
ahead of you,
things.
man.
Morgan, that was a good review. I very much enjoyed it.
Review.
Thank you.
Solid shit. I disagree with a lot of it, but that's fine.
Thank you.
Jesus Christ.
I love that passive aggressive, that specific passive aggressive comment, Saoirse, you've said multiple times while we've recorded the podcast.
You're wrong, but I love you, so it's okay.
No, but isn't that what's so great about doing this? It's like, I can say that you don't know what you're fucking talking about. We respect each other enough that that's fine.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right. So, bye.
Bye.
Okay, so
right.
who would like to go next?
By the way, before
I mean,
Saoirse, go.
I just want to
You
say
go.
I just want to say it's Jake's record, so I think
Oh yeah.
he should go.
Oh, okay.
But I would love to talk about it whenever you guys want me to.
Well,
Yeah, let's have Jake go.
I have a bit of a connection to this album, which I just sort of happenstance came across. I came across mainly because the YouTube music critic Crash Thompson reviewed it, and it made his end of the year list. And I was just like going through a bunch of music and like, random fucking thing, and I listened to it, and I just remember listening to it, and I was immediately very enamored with it because it does draw a lot, admittedly, from influences. It's just that they're, mostly influences that I really, 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 really like. That being said, I think that the importance of when you're doing a throwback album or when you are paying homage or even borrowing sound is you need to have two things. You need to have the enthusiasm to sound like this is something that you want to be doing, and also you need to display a thorough understanding of the genres and artists that you are paying tribute to in more than a skin deep way. And I think that is what fascinates me the most about Kyle, because the thing is that like, for as indebted to his influences this album might suggest that he is that there is just, and the reason why I give it a little bit more of a pass than maybe I would elsewhere is that I feel as if this album is taking, like, this is just a sound that isn't done very much anymore, even though its influence can be felt in places. I would say that maybe artists like Father John Misty would take a lot of that, but even then, I feel the sort of glam kind of opulence is just sort of something that we're missing in the modern musical landscape, which I think has decidedly gone into a valley of extremes, of extreme subtlety and extreme hyper sensitivity with specific sounds and blowing specific things out. But all that said, I need to meet the album on its own terms and talk about what it actually is rather than how I engage with it. And one of the things I like about it is the fact that it is very much a recount of a story that I do feel shines through as being sort of personal. There is the whole album sort of recounts an experience in a very kind of, not sonically, but in a narratively sort of Nick Cave kind of way. It sort of builds this environment and world in which these characters inhabit, mainly Kyle's experience with a very eccentric and wild woman who he just sort of fell in love with, even though he didn't mean to, and his sort of tale of just trying to deal with that in a very, like I said, Nick Cave and even kind of Billy Joel kind of fashion. And I discovered this at the start of a relationship that was very, very tumultuous in the same way that Kyle dictates here. And
I think I remember that relationship.
Yeah, you do. It's the exact one you're thinking of. And the sort of whiplash,
I bet I do too.
I mean, you all do. You were all there. But the emotional part of it rings true for me, just because I was like, there are lyrics and moments where I'm just kind of like, and the reason I latch onto it, the important part about this is because it sort of coats a situation that would be a terrible, toxic, and in hindsight, kind of horrifying emotional turmoil to go through. And it makes it palatable and digestible and experiential in a way that feels not only relatable, but a way that is like, it's not romanticizing it clearly, because it's very much about the struggle that he's going through lyrically, but it's more so that it is trying to make the best of a bad situation through its artistic expression. And I like that. And generally speaking, I think it's a 40-minute album. It's not very long. And the thing I find most admirable about it is the consistent energy it keeps up. Just from song to song to song to song, I am never, ever bored when listening to this. Not only because I think the production, which is mostly handled by Kyle on all fronts, is fucking fantastic and absolutely, like, it's instrumentally lavish, and it does change up from track to track, but it does manage to deliver a sort of unified sound that appeals to me, but I also think is generally quite diverse and interesting. There's so many instrumental just sort of details to pick back up on, but it never sacrifices anything for its energy, for its danceability, its quotability even. There's so many different select lyrics that I remember from this. And even when it slows down on select moments, like on the penultimate song, Bridge City Rose, it has a lyrical quality that I think is very quintessentially him. I feel like there aren't a lot of artists who they would all maybe take each select parts of his aesthetic and sound and do it this way, but not quite combine it in a way that feels this specific. And it's just a very fun record. That's what that's the core that I'm trying to get to here, is that I listen to this and it is an album that instantly puts me at ease and makes me feel carefree, despite the fact that it is a bit heavier in places, especially by the end. The excellent fucking closer, Gold Calf Moan, which I think is a standout on the record, lyrically and instrumentally. It's just such a confident and exuberant and loving display of different types of music, but to distinctly relay it in a modern sense, a more cohesive, a more full sense. And I just really love that about it, honestly. It's a record I come back to each time, and I walk away from it being slightly more impressed than I was the last time I heard it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I leap on that, if that's all right? Yeah. So I knew nothing about this record when I saw that it was the thing we were going to listen to. And I listened to Crash Thompson, so I should, but there we go.
It's an older video.
Right, yeah, fair enough. And the cover didn't grab me. It looked...
Oh no, it's terrible.
It's going to be a bit whack. And look, here's the
looks
thing.
like Jack White at a Renaissance fair.
Oh, you're so right. The thing is, like, we listen to a lot of quite difficult albums,
yeah. Which is why I kind of picked this, if you didn't catch on.
Yeah. So this might be influenced just by the fact that it was just so refreshing to, for work, have to listen multiple times in 1 week to a really fun record.
Yeah.
But I knew from the first second of the first song that I was going to love this record.
Fever Dream Girl is awesome. Great song.
Yeah. My notes.
Lord,
I don't know if
see
you
a
guys
Fever
can
Dream Girl before me now.
My note for Fever Dream Girl just says, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And you are right about the story. Like, the second song almost feels like an answer to the questions asked in the first song.
Yes. I love that flow.
The fact is, you're like, yeah, Elton John, Billy Joel are my big notes here, specifically Piano Man. But at the same time, there are lots of contemporary records that this reminded me of, or more contemporary records that this reminded me of. We've got Rock in the Suburbs by Ben Folds.
Very Ben Folds, yeah.
And we've got Miami Memory by Alex Cameron as well.
You made that comparison, and I was very apt to jump on. That was a great leaping
got that
off point.
comparison in my review as well.
But the reason I like this record so much is the same reason I love both of those records, which is this is like, it's a vintage form of pop music, but it's one that I never that I grew up with. That my dad would play me all the time, so I have a nostalgic attachment. But at the same time, it is one that doesn't really age for me if you do it with a contemporary perspective, which I think is done here. The production is immaculate. It's a form of music that I hear and I'm just like, I wish there were more records like this now. And I don't want to say it was better in the old days. I'm not one of those people. I love what pop music is at the moment. It's just whenever there is a record with this kind of large instrumentation with a rock band format that is out to do just pure toe tapping pop songs, I'm in. I am sold. There is not a record in here that I would not happily listen to 10 times in a row if you asked me. There are some songs I have less notes on than others I have less to say about, like The Rager, for example, but I really like that. There's a lovely sort of Creedence Clearwater Revival note to the intro of Heartbreak Junkie reminded me a lot of
That
their
guitar,
Vietnam song that I can't remember the name of. Fortunate Son. I do want to specifically highlight the penultimate song on the record, Bridge City Rose, which
Great song.
I told it to Jake and I wrote it down here. This is what my soul sounds like. It's just, God, when the intro kicks in properly, and you've got the soaring violins and the electric guitar and the pipes, and it sounds like I'm pissed in Ireland on New Year's Eve and we're all singing Old Lang Syne together amongst people I've known for 10 years. It's just, it is a transcendent moment for me on the record. This is just that moment where all of those instruments kick in on the intro. It's like what happiness sounds like to me. Not just happiness, but contentment. I love it so much.
I'm very glad.
The thing is, yeah, this is a throwback record. Sure, it wears its influences on its sleeve. Do I care? No. Just like you can wear your influences on your sleeves all you want. If you make a good piece of art, you've made a good piece of art, you know?
It's all about
confidence,
I think, and this record bleeds confidence.
Oh, absolutely. Like, look, you can read any screenplay I write, you can watch any movie I make, you can read any short story I write, and you can go, this is influenced by this, that, and this. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm finishing up a short story that is, you can point to 3 different giallo films that I'm intentionally ripping off, and a Hitchcock, and I don't give a shit. And I attempt to put a modern spin on all of those stories, partly by making it gay, but that's one thing. And I think this, some very heterosexual, but a modern spin on those sounds in this one. It takes the advantage of the recording techniques and increased advantages and sound quality we have in recording, just make something that sounds so contemporary and crisp and fresh. But it does the legacy of Billy Joel proud,
Yeah. And as of somebody who grew up on, like, Billy Joel was like the first formal artist I was ever introduced to as a child, so naturally it's going to get along well with me.
I grew up on Bowie records and
yeah, exactly,
and Elton John. Like my dad, who's asleep in the next room, has impeccable music taste, and he introduced me to what was impeccable then.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it that much, Saoirse. I'm glad that anybody enjoyed it that much at all. Or, yeah, just because it's a criminally underheard record. Yeah,
because I don't think it's going to get that nicer treatment in the rest of the episode.
Well, and just generally, I just want people to listen to it just because it is just, like...
Oh, I'm just basing on what you've already said, Tyler.
That's true.
Yeah.
I did make a snide comment earlier.
I just hope that one person watches this podcast and goes away and listens to it and gives it a shot.
Yeah, all of these albums that we discuss, I mean, the whole point of the discussion is that so people, if they haven't already heard them, can check them out themselves and then reflect on how they feel relative to us. Like, who do you line up with most closely on this particular record, whatever it is?
Absolutely.
And that's part of the fun of this, I think.
And there's different reasons you can select a record for this too, is that, like, I just had in mind, I was like, I need to pick a record that no one else in the podcast has heard and that I think needs more exposure, or like, and sometimes records just make for good discussions. Sometimes records will do this or that.
Definitely.
And this is,
I mean, that being said, if someone listens to our show and they hate Tallahassee by the mountain goats, they're fresh out of luck in that respect. But
you're going to have a tough time. All right.
I mean, they can relate to Morgan there.
Yeah. I'll go next then. If that's all right.
Good.
Since we're already kind of doing a random order.
Suppose you go next anyway, so go ahead.
Cool. So I will say, I have listened to this album a few times now. I will say I think that it starts very strong. I like the first 2 songs a lot, actually. Fever Dream Girl is a shiny kind of blaring piece of Springsteen-esque rock music. And the one comparison I want to bring up, and I'm going to return to this a lot on this record, and I'm really surprised no one else has brought this reference point up yet.
I love Octecker.
You're only going to get so much mileage out of that joke, August. I think that the 100 Gecs was much closer. Anyway,
I disagree. You're wrong.
Bye, Poppy.
that joke is already kind of like really dead in its...
But I'm gonna push it so that it goes back through the bad joke filter back into being ironically good again.
Anyway, like I was saying, the reference point that was most apparent to me throughout this album that I'm surprised no one has brought up is that this sounds a lot like Meatloaf. Like a lot.
Don't listen to
can-
Meatloaf.
I can kind of see it.
Well,
Not a lot, but
I
I
can
can see
see it standing in front of me as someone who grew up with or who has listened to a lot of the music of Meatloaf.
Okay.
It definitely stands out as a comparison, both in terms of like how the instrumentals are orchestrated, and but also just how Kyle's voice sounds. Very similar. But yeah, I like the opening track. It works nicely as intro. I do think it kind of ends a bit abruptly, but then it kind of goes into the second track, which kind of follows on from it nicely. And the second track, the title track, I think is the best song on the album. It's a fuller sounding track in terms of construction. Kyle's vocals are more impressive here. He writes catchy melodies and smooth production. And the track just has a nice swing to it as well. Like there are vocal lines and just, a progression to it that I got stuck in my head quite easily when I first heard it. But the thing about this record, and this is going to be an interesting kind of like an analytical point, I think. A lot of these songs hit all the beats of the genres that they're borrowing from. It's just not particularly a style of music that I'm generally terribly enamored with, the kind of like bombastic piano rock sort of thing, glammy. Also, this I think brings up the question of when being derivative is fine versus when being derivative harms your album. And Saoirse's already kind of touched on the notion of what is being derivative in music and why do people assume it's an inherently negative thing when it's not an inherently negative thing. I don't think there's any mistake that this is a very derivative and largely unoriginal album, but that's not inherently a problem. Anyone who says that's an inherent issue is foolish and short-sighted, in my opinion. But I have to say, most of the time while listening to this, while it felt quite pleasant, I really just wished I were listening to Bat Out of Hell or E Street Shuffle, or even more recently, artists who approach this kind of sound with more color and more of a unique personality, like Alex Cameron, who's already been mentioned. I don't want to dwell on this next point too long because I don't really think it's that big a deal, but I also think that some of the lyricism here in songs like The Rager kind of reveals somewhat limited view of women, with some of the portrayals across the album being of either these seductive, ill-intentioned temptresses or just purely heartbroken shells. Look, these are images of fairly two-dimensional people, these kind of icons, and again, that's not inherently a bad thing if there's some kind of attempt to challenge or complicate the stereotypes that Kyle is working with. And I could probably forgive a record like this not doing that as much if it were released, say, 40, 50 years ago. But in 2018, when this was released, it feels very much to me as though Kyle is cashing in on a style of songwriting, on iconography, and on stereotypes that I don't think are terribly compelling or engaging. And I will confess, at certain points in the album, just made me roll my eyes a bit. That said, this is not a negative review, it's a mixed review. That said, this is a record that sounds good. It's not a half-assed cash-in on a style. Kraft at least fully commits himself. And while I don't think the songs are always there is certainly nothing outright bad on this record, by any means. Slick and Delta Queen is a fairly moving breakup ballad that I think understands the complicated emotion of that situation fairly well. One of the better songs, I think. I enjoy the melodies.
With that song,
yeah,
I just want to mention those rattling pianos crawling up before the chorus.
Right,
just gives me fucking chills. I love it.
Nice. Yeah, a great detail. Very good. I enjoy the melodies and the performances on the song Fake Magic Angel, even if it's Kyle in his most bitter and least compelling mode for me lyrically. Bridge City Rose is a swaying ballad that incorporates harmonica in a really nice way, but otherwise I think doesn't do very much to differentiate itself from the other tracks on the record. And I'm going to say it has some of Kyle's dullest writing, in my opinion. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to say that. I
It's
like
fine. It's fine.
this is totally unintentional, but I love the way that we've kind of come full circle in this video with with us.
Jake loves, ironically, I love sincerely.
Like how Jake and Saoirse were the opposition to me, Morgan, and August on the Jessie Ware album, and now the roles are a bit reversed here. I don't actually know how August
Both
feels, but
throwback
I don't
records
imagine
as
this is
well.
like August core. But maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe August will love it. But
But
anyway,
both throwback records as well.
they are both throwback records. It's a very good point. The closing track, Gold Calf Moan, is basically, I mean, this is oversimplifying it, but to me, like, the more I listened to the song, the more it just felt like Kyle was gloating to some guy that his ex-girlfriend is a great lay. Look, I don't find that offensive at all. I just think that Kyle as a personality reminds me of a lot of people I've known in the past who, let's just say, were maybe a bit delusional.
Right. I mean, I've made that critique of other albums we've talked about, so I can't complain.
Yeah, and like, to bring this back to Meatloaf, and specifically with regard to Meatloaf, the songwriting of Jim Steinman, who wrote those songs, who, again, I am consistently reminded on every single track here. There's a thrilling ability in those in albums like Bad Out of Hell. There's a thrilling ability to conjure images and scenes that feel instantly timeless, and that pull you along through breathtaking, multifaceted rock arrangements that are excessive and over the top, but they're thrilling because of that excess. This feels like a diet version of that to me. It feels like trying to condense all that energy and that fire into 3 or 4 minute chunks. And Kyle, God bless him, hearing his story about how he kind of like crowdfunded the album and like how it was a real passion project for him, that gives me a lot of love for him and sympathy for that grind and that struggle. But to me, Kyle, I just don't think has the personality nor the musical skill to pull off doing this condensed Meatloaf thing, Billy Joel thing, whatever. So I respect the attempt, I really do, but it just doesn't connect for me. I don't really see myself coming back to this album too much. Maybe I will once or twice more, but it was definitely a case of where each time I heard it, I was certainly not getting more favorable. Let's just say it wore on me a little bit after a few listens, and I have to be honest about that. But it's an immaculately well produced record. I agree in that regard, and it's certainly not a boring album for the most part. Although I do think it's front loaded. It just it isn't really for me, if I'm honest. But I enjoyed...
I would like to piggyback off of some of the things that you said, because you made some great points.
Please.
I think to comment on Kyle's attitude, this is probably going to be a very unpopular opinion, but the thing about me with Alex Cameron's music specifically is that is an example of an artist whose idiosyncrasies just feel too overbearing for me to enjoy. I like his records and what I've listened to of him. It's just that it feels like he becomes a little too obsessed in what he can do and does not stop. And in that respect, I understand why that would appeal to people more, just because it is a divergent thing. And this leads Alex Cameron to interrogating his persona or his character or the people in his albums a lot more directly than, anything ever. And my take on at least Kyle's attitude here is that I've always interpreted the protagonist of this album to be a shallow dickhead. And I know that perhaps I might be giving the album a bit too much credit, and the fact that it is not something that is interrogated very often on the album. It isn't, at all. But that said, I just feel I can intuit enough to the point where I can let some of the more, because this was something that was on my mind the last time I revisited it, lyrically speaking, is that it was sort of just able to bounce off of me in places where I feel like it would bother me otherwise, just because I feel like this is the attitude of somebody who, like Tyler, who you said people who were delusional. Like on songs like Heartbreak Junkie, I sort of feel like the beginning of that song is sort of the conceit to his character, of him being in the opening set of lyrics of him being in denial of him just being like, ha, like, oh, that was fun, but can you like not make me stop loving you now? That would be super great. And I just sort of, I think, take it like that, and I'm not trying to like explain why anybody was wrong or explain why somebody like shouldn't take issue with
No, I
this.
get
Like
it.
again, it's not interrogated, and I get that. I'm just saying that's the reason for me it is not particularly bothersome. And also, I just want to establish you did make some absolutely fantastic points about the album that I completely 100% understand. It's definitely an album that, like, again, for me, when you do a throwback, it's about enthusiasm and passion, and that's what I look for. But in that same vein, if you are not someone who is already not a fan of all of these artists that we've talked about, this is not going to be an album that's going to convert you on any level whatsoever. Like, if you are not a fan of literally, like, even if you're not a fan of, like, just one of the people we listed, you run the gambit of not liking this purely by its assembled ideas.
But my perspective as a fan of those artists is that I don't feel that this offers anything that they don't already offer better.
Can I just add my say on this, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Because, and I know I'm holding off August, who hasn't said a fucking thing yet, but I'm gonna. So, if we are comparing this to the gender politics of Miami Memory, this is nowhere near as transgressive or insightful to gender politics as that record is. Like a song like "Feel Bad for the Boys" is just one of the most, like, that song shouldn't work in the current era, but it does in a way that only that man could do, because it is empathetic but critical and intelligent about what it's talking about in terms of the gender politics.
Totally agree.
With this record, I was never under the impression that the lead character on this record wasn't sleazy at best.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But I was never under the impression that this is someone to respect or agree with or look up to.
Sure, I just think
that's not a rebuttal to you, Tyler. I think she's just explaining why it was okay with her.
That's obviously fair and valid. I think the thing with Alex Cameron is that there's an explicit self-awareness there, and there's like a playing around with kind of like parodying a particular kind of image. Whereas to me, I listened to this many times, and I really don't see any evidence of self-awareness or any evidence for me that there's any kind of
I get that.
That this is any
but
kind
it comes
of
back to like there are some. And look, like I have a degree in cinema now, so this is what I'm going to compare it to sometimes, even if this is a music podcast. But like there are some films that kind of just like, and I'm not saying this is this record because it never flags it up, but there are some films that people lambast on. But I just like, I feel like the film just like expects me to have a reasonable moral compass when viewing this material and make my own moral judgments.
Sure.
And I have no idea what Kyle Craft is as a person, but just listening to this record, it was just like, I understand this is like a sleazy fuck that I'm seeing the eyes of this world through. I'm seeing the world through their eyes. But when I bring my own baggage to it, I understand that. And if someone listens to this and is completely like, yeah, bruh, yeah, then I would say that says more about them than it does about the record.
Well, I mean, I definitely know people who I could send this album to and be like, this is great. What the fuck? This is like, I love this guy.
Yeah.
For that,
but I think that would say more about
girls
them
really
than it does
do
about the
be
record
like that,
personally.
man.
It's like people who empathize with Tyler Durden and Fight Club. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's not quite the same thing, but it's the same.
No,
I get
that
what
film
you're
has
getting at.
much more internal criticism.
No,
like,
Anyway, I would like to hear from August now.
Yes, please.
Okay, so throughout this whole discussion, we've kind of been making comparisons to various other artists.
That we have.
And I've got a comparison that I think while I think comparisons like the Meatloaf comparison, the Alex Cameron comparison are good, I think there's one that I can think of that only Jake will understand, but I think he will agree with me.
Oh no.
In that I find Kyle Craft's musical stylings and aesthetics to be quite similar to those of fellow Sub Pop signee King Tough.
Ah, fuck, that's good. No, you're right. No, absolutely, 100%.
And the reason I mention this is because I feel the way you feel about this record is the way I feel about King Tough's The Other, in that it is a record that came along at a point in my life where I felt like it was just an absolute essential record for me to hear, and it was everything I wanted and everything I needed, and at that current
And a great
time
record.
period. Yeah. And so some of what I'll say here is kind of in comparison to that album, mainly that they're definitely going for quite contrasting approaches. King Tough's approach is more, he's approaching more neo-psychedelia, garage, and glam, where this is mostly aiming at glam and southern rock. So I think that's important to mention, because this is a very tight and focused album. Kraft certainly understands the sonic aesthetic he's trying to develop, and I think he develops it quite well on a couple songs. And it feels like there are even points when I think the Meatloaf comparison is very good, because there are times when he's getting very instrumentally ambitious, maybe even overly instrumentally ambitious, like the title track being an example of that.
That's the one. That's the song where he sings about a whiplash woman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that.
Yeah.
That was so
What's a
Meatloaf.
boy to do?
Yeah, I like
No,
that. That was great.
really-
I like that hook. It's very Meatloaf.
No, it's,
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
So this album definitely has a lot of very fun, compelling moments, but I feel, unfortunately, with repeat listens, where at first I was feeling a very emphatic love towards this record, it kind of started to roll off of me more and more, almost to a degree I felt very unfortunate. And it kind of feels similar to how Tyler described this record as being one with diminishing returns. But then there was the point you mentioned where Jake, where you found this record to just get better and better and be more consistently enjoyable with each listen. And that is exactly how I feel about that King Tough record, The Other. And I just think it's a very interesting dichotomy there, because to me it's almost, this record, listening to it, is almost giving me the experience and understanding of someone listening to that King Tough record and then coming at me with the perspective of I don't really love it, because
I really like that perspective, August. I think that's valuable.
No,
You're valuable.
Yeah, Jake is. I like a lot of the.
So are you.
Nah. But I like
we have a
lot
podcast with you for a reason, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
Anyway, set the title for the record while we're here.
Yes. So I like a lot of the characters and stories presented across this record, like on The Rager or the title track. It does feel very Bowie-esque, except almost in a microcosm of, it feels like multiple similar people instead of just like one focused person on a David Bowie album. Really, my ultimate and kind of unfortunate issue is that it's just a case of diminishing returns. I feel less and less satisfied the more I listen to it. But I will say, I do think the back half is quite a bit better than the front half. You've got like Slick and
August
the Delta
always
Queen.
coming in always with the contrarian, whichever half everyone prefers. You prefer the back half, and I love that. You always find something to love about the songs that people don't, and I love that.
Oh, wonderful. And Fake Magic Angel also, very nice. I just love how the back half almost feels a bit more diverse to me, where I can understand maybe it being a bit more scattershot would deter some people. But it's just a tad homogenized for my taste. But I do get a good deal. But I do get a lot out of listening to this record. For example, understanding the perspective of others in a comparison to myself. So all that being said, I am very, very glad you recommended this album, because even though I am not in love with it, I do think it's a good album, and that's about what I have to say on this record.
Honestly, this makes me retroactively be very grateful, because my one fear, even though my intent was just to get more word on it, my fear was that it would A, not spark interesting discussion, or B, all lead to everyone having the same criticism. And while there is sort of a shared mentality as to what some of those criticisms are, I feel like everyone came at this with a differing and interesting enough perspective for me to understand it a little bit more. And I am overall glad and far less anxious and worried that it would not spark for or make for interesting talk.
Yeah. I feel that stress. I was that stressed about the Mountain Goats one.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't know. I feel like I make recommendations all the time that are me recommendations that just no one else fucking cares about. So I was very glad everyone liked that. But I just want to make a request, because I want Jake to hear the rating I'm going to give this before he gives his rating. So I'm going to ask we go in reverse order, if that's
okay.
Yeah, let's go in reverse order. So my 3 favorite tracks are Full Circle Nightmare, Fever Dream Girl, and Silicon Delta Queen. My least favorite track is, I'm sorry to say this, Bridge City Rose.
Oof.
No. And I'm going to give the album a light 6 out of 10.
That's fair, dude. All right, so that's me. And my favourite tracks were Bridge City Rose, and Beef Dream Girl and Full Circle Nightmare. I'd probably say my least favourite one, probably The Rager, I want to say. And I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10.
Yay!
Oh,
Happy.
Okay, that
We love to see it.
I cannot say. I did not expect that in any universe, but I applaud you for it.
Thank you. It's just done.
I got the record that Saoirse gave a 10 to. Fuck yeah!
Look,
Let's go!
Right there, you did not just pull the rug out from under my feet. You pulled it out and then shot me in the forehead, just for extra effect. Oh boy.
This has been a journey of a podcast episode, honestly.
Anyways, my 3 favorite tracks are The Rager, Slick and the Delta Queen, and Fake Magic Angel. My least favorite would probably be the title track, for what I've kind of mentioned, as in I find it a bit biting off a bit more than it can actually chew. But I still appreciate the effort, and I will give this album a 6 out of 10 myself.
Wow.
Triple
Right,
sixes.
well, I was gonna say I can live with everybody at least giving it a positive score. That's okay by me.
Six.
I will say my 3 favorites are Full Circle Nightmare, Heartbreak Junkie, and I'll go with Bridge City Rose. And I guess my least favorite, probably Belmont One Trick Pony, even though I still like that song. And I have the album at, again, I rated 4 albums, and I had 2 of each have the exact same score, and that's an emphatic 9 out of 10 from me. And I would just like to say the arc of this podcast has been uniformly interesting, as we had the most dissent amongst one another with the Jessie Ware album. We all came together in shared appreciation for the Boris album, and then we all sort of had kind of diverging opinions on this record, but we all still kind of saw eye to eye at the end.
Incredible.
It was a beautiful 3-act structure almost.
Yeah.
I will say the other thing I find interesting are the stealth alliances of Tyler, Morgan, and I. The
Who would have
greatest
predicted?
combative forces
Who would
working
have
together. Yeah.
Wow.
After the Lamb of God episode, Saoirse and I are just like, we gotta watch out for each other, Chief.
Anyways, so we've got some records to talk about next week, one of which is my recommendation. So I will first tell you about the 2 new releases we are going to cover, which are Proto Martyr's new record, Ultimate Success Day, and
Ultimate
Rope
Success
Jump
2 Day.
Gazers.
Ultimate Success 2 Day.
By the best.
Oh, 2 Day. I see.
Yes.
Ultimate Success 2 Day and Rope Jump Gazers by the Best.
You did that one wrong
like-
on purpose, surely.
Yes, I did. No, I didn't. I'm
Was
dyslexic.
Jump
But
rope gazers
that's-
by the best.
Jump
They're
Rope
this kind of, like,
Gazers by the Best.
They're this like alternative rock kind of shoegazy
Yeah,
band
I have
that
heard
I
lots of
discovered
good
earlier
things.
this year.
They
I
look like
literally-
this. Like, look
As
at
soon
these-
as
look at
we
these
started
fucking
this
nerds.
podcast, I just ran across them on YouTube and I was like, I dig these guys, the fuck. And they had a new album coming out, so I was like, let's do that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyways.
I've heard good things about them.
My recommendation for next week is an artist we are pretty universally familiar with, we pretty universally love,
I forgot.
and we're talking about a record of theirs that is the turning point in their career for the worse.
Is it that?
So
is,
we are
is
going to
this
be
record...
discussing.
Sorry, you say the name of the record first.
We are going to be discussing Bruce Springsteen's Tunnel of Love.
I don't know
Wow.
that this is the album where people think he turned for the worst.
No,
This was
but
like
I mean,
I think it's
mean
the
that in
last
the-
of his popular canon that's considered good.
Yeah. Well, there are
Like, really good?
other records later that are considered good, like The Rising, which I
Yeah.
think would also be an interesting album to discuss. But Tunnel
But
of Love
it
is a
is
turning
like-
point.
Yeah, it is.
I say it as the turning point of it is the end of his like original run
Golden
of
era.
Yeah.
great stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And
and
I
we've
might listen.
we've talked about Springsteen on like every single episode. It's about time we covered him in some respect.
Yeah, I'm looking
I
forward
might
to it.
finally listen to Nebraska in the week.
you should.
It's a
Yeah,
short
you
album
should.
too.
You should.
It's like 38 minutes or something.
But yeah, anyway,
But,
so look forward to that one. This one
And
next
look
week.
forward to
the bracket. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
The
talking about?
bracket, yeah.
the bracket.
Okay, so the bracket will be up this week if you're watching the video when it is released on Twitter. So follow us at JamesTPod. It should be down in the description box below. Follow us on Twitter there, and so make sure you can catch all of the polls as things stand right now at time of recording, and so it will be still the same when you see this. You can see all of the albums that are going to be on the poll, and you can see what they are matched up, what albums are matched up in terms of what albums are going to go up against each other, and what will happen to the winner of each matchup. So go and check that out now, and make sure you voted if you haven't already. And yeah,
Absolutely.
we'll see
Shall
you
we
next week.
plug our next B-sides as well while we're here?
Yes, we are going to record a B-sides episode discussing the full studio album discography of punk band Against Me. That
My
we are gonna
favourite
be-
band.
We're going to be recording that very soon, and that will be up shortly as well. So stick around for that as well.
All
It'll
right.
be fun.
Rock over London. Rock on Chicago. Goldfish, the snack that smiles back.